Chapter 2187 Unworthy Opponent. Blood Emperor could sense the terrifying power as the surrounding crimson-red power concentrated on his crimson-red spear. His spear was made of special materials and was almost indestructible. Under the impact, it bent into an arc. He himself backed off from the strong impact. Blood Emperor was surprised, while Emperor 13 was shocked. Emperor 13 appeared in front of Blood Emperor like a ghost as a strange sword light appeared. It went straight for his throat. The speed was incredibly fast as it threatened to penetrate the throat. Right then, the crimson-red light on Blood Emperor turned dark. The strange sword light penetrated Blood Emperor's throat and completely destroyed his body. However, there was no blood at all. The body turned into a bloody mist and dissipated. In a space not too far away, Blood Emperor dematerialized. He looked mean and scary. He looked up at Jian Wushuang and exclaimed, "This aura? It is a secret skill of 7-star. Even though the secret skill of 7-star is powerful, it does not make sense that it is so much more powerful. Especially in his power." Blood Emperor was dumbfounded. The power of the sword of Jian Wushuang gave him a shock. In terms of power, he felt that Jian Wushuang could overpower him. But Blood Emperor had already reached the chaotic divine demon realm. Jian Wushuang stared at Blood Emperor. What a weird technique. The sword light by Emperor 13 was about to kill him, and yet he could escape unharmed? Jian Wushuang muttered to himself in pity. That was a good chance to kill Blood Emperor, but he had dodged the bullet to his head. As for Emperor 13, he was still indifferent and calm. It was as though he had foreseen that Blood Emperor would do that. Even if I failed once, there is always a second try. With my current fighting power, I believe that I can kill him with the help of Emperor 13. Jian Wushuang's aura boiled as the 7 Hongjun golden swords burst forth instantly. It was the same 7 Hongjun golden swords and the same understanding of the space-time sword principle, but his power level had increased. As of his current power level, each of the 7 Hongjun golden swords had reached the power level of the chaotic divine demon realm. Any of these swords could suppress Emperor by easily, and there were a total of 7. The 7 beams of golden light appeared around Blood Emperor at the same time. They attacked him from 7 different angles. Jian Wushuang's size grew. We could clearly see the 9 heads and 18 arms coming out of his well-built body. He took a step, clearly indicating that he wanted to engage in close-range combat. Blood Emperor squinted his eyes as he moved his body slightly. The 7 Hongjun golden swords passed by him without even touching his clothes. Blood Emperor was not afraid when he saw Jian Wushuang charging at him with a well-built body. He held his spear in one hand as crimson-red mist spread out once more. Following that, spear lights filled the entire space. Each spear was like a venomous snake coming out of its nest, silent and stealthily. Each was incredibly fast. Most importantly, each spear radiated a thick aura of rules of order. Blood Emperor only had 2 arms and could only wield 1 spear. Jian Wushuang had 18 arms and swords. Furthermore, he made use of the special fighting technique unique to the ancient god clan. Even so, a scene that made Jian Wushuang widen his eyes in shock happened. Blood Emperor suppressed Jian Wushuang with a single spear. It was completely one-sided. At first, Blood Emperor had been very serious. As time passed, he had become more casual. Using his spear, he thrusted, flicked, sweeped, and even smashed at Jian Wushuang. Even though it looked casual, every attack was almost perfect. Jian Wushuang felt that his swordsmanship was useless in the face of these spears. Not only swordsmanship, he could not even fully utilize his power. How can this be the case? Jian Wushuang frowned. Even though I am more powerful than him, I am being suppressed? I have already utilized my ancient god body, cast ancient god secret skills, and maximized my close combat abilities. Jian Wushuang was shocked. He knew that the attacks from Emperor 13 and Blood Emperor were extremely complex and powerful. However, no matter how powerful it was, Jian Wushuang should have been able to hold his ground using 18 arms and the fighting techniques of the ancient god clan. The results? Unbelievable. He possesses incredible spear skills. Furthermore, his fighting techniques, consciousness and ability to make decisions are far superior than mine. So this is a superpower from the ancient past. Jian Wushuang was dumbfounded. In the space nearby, Emperor 13 stood there coldly. He witnessed the battle between Jian Wushuang and Blood Emperor but did not interfere at all. However, Blood Emperor was getting impatient. At the end of a day, an ant is still an ant. Even if the ant possesses incredible power, it does not know how to use it at all. Blood Emperor mocked. He started to swing his crimson spear even faster. It became 30% faster. However, Jian Wushuang was not able to handle this increase in speed. The crimson spear collided with the holy body of Jian Wushuang. Even with the 5-gem armor, a hole was pierced in his holy body. He backed off immediately. While he was backing off, the divine power within Jian Wushuang swept out and healed his injury. Jian Wushuang stood there once again, studying Blood Emperor with shock in his eyes. You cannot beat him with fighting technique alone. Emperor 13 finally spoke casually. Jian Wushuang sighed and agreed. Jian Wushuang's power was stronger than Blood Emperor's after casting secret skills of Star Palace to increase his fighting power by 1,000 times. Based on the power advantage alone, it was impossible to defeat the Blood Emperor and kill him head-on. Blood Emperor's experience, spear skills and understanding of rules of order were far superior to his. If I cannot win by fighting techniques, I shall use brute force, Jian Wushuang said coldly. Chapter 2188 Mountain River Map, out. It was silent on the battlefield. Blood Emperor stood there holding his spear as though he was the ruler of the Sea of Crimson Red. Jian Wushuang and Emperor 13 stood a distance away, staring intently at Blood Emperor. Ha! What a pity! Blood Emperor laughed and broke the silence. Blood Emperor stared at Emperor 13 and smiled coldly. Emperor 13, what a pity! You could have killed me if the power this brat has now is in your control. It looks like fate is on my side today. With the power you mastered at half-step Divine Demon Realm, all you can do is go even with me. You cannot kill me. As for Jian Wushuang, he only has power. His own fighting is far too weak to pose a threat to me. Blood Emperor mocked. The effect of two different people using the exact same power could be vastly different. For example, for the same amount of power of the weakest real god, an almighty or great emperor could use that power but have the fighting power of a peak real god. If a weak universe god had the power of a peak real god, the battle power he could use would only be around that of an ordinary real god. This was the difference. Jian Wushuang and Emperor 13 was an obvious example. Emperor 13 was simply in the half-step Divine Demon Realm, yet his battle power was on par with Blood Emperor, who was in the chaotic Divine Demon Realm. On the other hand, Jian Wushuang was too weak for the top-tier experts from the ancient past. Even if he had extraordinary power from casting secret skills of Star Palace, the fighting power he had was still weaker than that of Blood Emperor. Emperor 13, I respect your fighting power. It is a pity that there is no way that both of you can kill me. Hence, all you can do is to stay there and watch me destroy this world. Blood Emperor laughed delightfully. He felt it was a pity that he was not able to kill Emperor 13. However, he felt elated that a superpower like Emperor 13 had suffered. Hearing this, Emperor 13 had no reaction. Jian Wushuang looked up and said, Blood Emperor, it might be too early for you to be happy. Oh! Blood Emperor looked over at Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang stopped talking as he whipped out a scroll. This scroll looked ordinary. However, it radiated an ancient and unique aura. After the scroll appeared, Jian Wushuang channeled his divine power and tossed this scroll high up into the sky. The scroll merged with heaven and earth instantly. A special light was seen high up in the sky as something occurred. This is? Everyone looked up at the sky. The sky was blood red, had been empty. But the space was filled. It was filled by a gigantic and beautiful picture scroll world. This picture scroll world occupied the entire sky as it turned into life. An ancient and majestic aura came from within the picture scroll world. One could even hear soft chimes. Every chime calmed people's minds and made them forget the negative thoughts. The experts standing below stared at this picture scroll world, and they saw an endlessly large world. This world had mountains and streams. The scenery was awesome as well. Within this world, what attracted the most attention were the 9 continents that were spread out at the different ends of the world. Each of the 9 continents had countless cities and humans. Every human on the continent was very realistic and radiated aura that belonged to cultivators. It was as though the picture scroll had come to life. The picture scroll world was alive. If people did not see Jian Wushuang taking out this treasure with their own eyes, they would think the picture scroll was a real world. My power grew. The mountain river map seems even more realistic when I use it with full force. Jian Wushuang exclaimed. Mountain river map was one of his many trump cards. It was also the strongest treasure he had. This treasure came from his master, Xian. He had used the mountain river map many times before. During those times, this mountain river map had not felt so realistic. The aura was also much stronger now. This is the mountain river map belonging to the 7-star Black Sect? Blood Emperor Irises constricted in shock when he saw the mountain river map. This is the mountain river map. No matter the aura or the way to activate it, it is exactly the same as back then. The strongest treasure that the 7-star Black Sect has is in the hands of this brat? Blood Emperor looked at Jian Wushuang, indecisive of what he should do next. The mountain river map had been very famous back in the ancient past. Now, in the second era, a brat in the chaotic realm could wield it? Was this possible? Jian Wushuang ignored the Blood Emperor. With my current fighting power, how many seals can I cast? How powerful could they be? Jian Wushuang thought to himself as he anticipated the results. Let's try. Jian Wushuang attacked without hesitation. A continuous stream of divine power surged up towards the picture scroll world. There was star power mincing with the divine power. Immediately, an overbearing aura radiated from the picture scroll world. The picture scroll world had 9 continents. One of the continents looked like it had come alive as it moved within the picture scroll world. 9 province seal, the 4th seal. Seal of clouds. The 4th seal, seal of clouds, descended under the control of Jian Wushuang. The large province came down slowly. The sky turned dark immediately. Everyone looked up and stared at the majestic continent that was descending towards them. No one spoke as everyone was tense. There was silence. The only sound that could be heard was of heavy breathing. No one from the eternal chaotic world could stop this seal. Chapter 2189 9 Province Seal. The majestic continent descended. The majestic continent covered too big an area and the suppressing power was incredible. Blood Emperor was located at the center of this majestic continent and had nowhere to run. He could only fight it head-on. Humph! Blood Emperor grunted as he turned gloomy. The mountain river map is an incredible treasure. However, its true power can only be used by a real expert. As for you, you can only cast the weakest skill for this mountain river map, the 9 province seal. Furthermore, you can't even cast the complete 9 province seal. You can never kill me with just this power. Blood Emperor pointed his spear towards the incoming continent. A crimson-red light appeared the moment he pointed his spear. This crimson light looked like it could destroy everything in this world as it charged into the incoming continent. The bottom of the continent was penetrated instantly as it crumbled into pieces and dispersed in all directions. Seeing this, the experts from the eternal chaotic world were shocked. How is this possible? He stopped such a powerful attack so easily? The Blood Emperor is far too strong. The experts exclaimed in surprise. At the center of the battlefield, Jian Wushuang remained indifferent. Compared to before, this 4th seal is much stronger now. However, it is impossible for this to kill the Blood Emperor, Jian Wushuang muttered to himself. He knew that the 4th seal, seal of clouds, could not harm the Blood Emperor. He had cast it to test how powerful his 9 province seal was. What followed was the real deal. The limitless amounts of divine power boiled. Jian Wushuang started to make various hand signs. Another majestic province descended from the picture scroll world. The aura was even stronger and terrifying. This was the 5th seal of the 9-province seal. What a joke! The Blood Emperor roared, not afraid. A limitless amount of blood chi started to boil as the boundless sea of blood appeared again. The sea of blood was endless. Blood Emperor was at the center of the sea of blood. Large amounts of blood gathered to form a gigantic exotic beast. This exotic beast looked like it was invincible. The moment the beast was formed, a deafening roar was heard from the sea of blood and reverberated throughout the battlefield. The sound wave swept out in all directions. Many of the experts from the eternal chaotic world covered their ears even though they were far away from the battlefield. Those who reacted slower experienced bleeding from their eardrums. Those experts who were on this battlefield were at least in the chaotic realm. After the roar, the exotic beast raised its hands up high. The majestic province was held up and could not descend further. The 5th seal dissipated after the power was used up. Even the 5th seal cannot hurt him? Jian Wushuang thought to himself as he squinted his eyes. He could not cast the 5th seal with his own power. Now, he had the secret skills of Star Palace active, which enabled him to cast this seal. He never thought that the Blood Emperor could stop this attack so easily. Next up, Jian Wushuang made more unique hand signs. His divine power and star power were absorbed by the picture scroll world at an insane rate. Within moments, the 6th seal of the 9-province seal descended. The 6th seal. Blood Emperor was taken aback. The mountain river map was infamous for its several powerful skills. Even though the 9-province seal was the most ordinary skill in the mountain river map, it was definitely powerful when it was used against experts in the chaotic divine demon realm. The Blood Emperor took this attack seriously. Come. The Blood Emperor roared madly. The sea of blood started to turn violent as dark crimson armor appeared. The same armor appeared on the gigantic exotic beast as well. The exotic beast roared in anger. This exotic beast raised its hands once again in an attempt to stop the 6th seal. However, the 6th seal in the 9-province seal was at least 5 times as powerful as the 5th. The exotic beast could stop the 5th seal, but the 6th seal. The crimson armor of the exotic beast turned dark and the blood chi started to escape from the body once the seal collided with the exotic beast. Within moments, a loud boom was heard. The gigantic ancient blood beast crumbled under the pressure of the 6th seal. The remaining power was headed straight for Blood Emperor. Boom! The earth was split apart and the entire Blood Emperor sanctuary grounds was destroyed. What was left was a humongous crater so deep that one could not see the bottom. At the center of the crater, a figure stood, battered. This figure was the Blood Emperor. At this moment, his clothes were ripped and wounds could be seen on his crimson skin. There were bloodstains around his mouth as well. Even so, he was not angry. He smiled wantonly. Hi, not bad. The 6th seal. Is that it? Blood Emperor sounded like he was crazy. The surrounding experts fell silent when they saw this. The 6th seal that Jian Wushuang had cast could only cause light injuries to Blood Emperor. To kill him, the power of the 6th seal is not enough. Unless he has the 7th seal. Emperor 13 looked over at Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang was slightly depressed. He had to admit he had underestimated the fighting power of Blood Emperor and the techniques the experts from the ancient past had had. Even though the Blood Emperor was not in prime condition and was only in the chaotic divine demon realm, it would not be easy to kill him. The 6th seal did not manage to kill him. As for the 7th seal, the mountain river map had 9 seals, representing 9 states. Every 3 seals was a bottleneck as the next seal would be much more powerful and require much more divine power to cast. Jian Wushuang could barely cast the 6th seal. As for the 7th seal, not enough. With the amount of divine power I have now, I cannot cast the 7th seal. Jian Wushuang roared. All 9 ancient god stars crumbled in the next moment. Boom! 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 They crumbled one after another. Chapter 2190. Goodbye. Out of the 9 ancient god stars, he had destroyed 4 of them. The 4 stars turned into bloodline power that Jian Wushuang could use. Not enough. This is far from enough. Jian Wushuang's face darkened. Boom, 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 boom. The remaining 5 stars crumbled together. Every single one of the 9 stars crumbled. He was betting everything he had. Instantly, ancient god's bloodline power erupted within his body as this power multiplied. Even so, Jian Wushuang realized he could not cast the 7th seal. Even after all 9 stars crumbled, I can't cast the 7th seal? Jian Wushuang muttered to himself. The difference between the 6th and the 7th seal was far too great. The amount of power needed to cast the 7th seal was much more than that needed for the 6th. Not enough. I need more power. Jian Wushuang clenched his fists as determination started to burn in his eyes. He had already used most of his trump cards. He had even used star destruction skill to its fullest and destroyed all 9 stars. However, he still required more power. At this moment, there was only one way left for him to cast the 7th seal. Jian Wushuang stood there, determined. He looked up slowly. He was not looking at Blood Emperor or Emperor 13. He focused his vision on a beautiful figure some distance away. That figure was Leng Rushue. Looking at that figure, his heart burned. Sorry, Leng Rushuang. Jian Wushuang said silently to himself. However, it was like this sentence had been transmitted into the sleeping consciousness of the beautiful figure far away. Leng Rushue stood there quietly. However, when she saw Jian Wushuang's eyes, she shuddered. Emperor Bai, please take care of Green Fire World for me. Jian Wushuang said as his voice reverberated throughout the battlefield. Jian Wushuang, what are you saying? Emperor Bai asked, knitting his eyebrows. Jian Wushuang did not elaborate. He continued to scan the experts from the eternal chaotic world. Goodbye, everyone. Instantly, a vast amount of soul power erupted. The limitless amount of soul power was like oil meeting fire. It was set ablaze. This is... Emperor Bai turned pale. Soul ignition. The experts from the eternal chaotic world were shocked as exclamations could be heard everywhere. Soul ignition? A technique that would only be used in a situation where one would definitely die to do the most amount of damage to their opponents. Before Emperor 13 reached them, the experts from the eternal chaotic world were prepared to cast soul ignition to sacrifice everything to defend their home. They did not do so as Emperor 13 had arrived and seen hope. However, under the clear view of everyone, Jian Wushuang had used this technique. Jian Wushuang was trying to drag Blood Emperor down with him. 9 Province Seal, the 7th seal. After casting soul ignition, Jian Wushuang's power multiplied again. The limitless amount of divine power and bloodline power were fully utilized. Jian Wushuang's flushed face was twisted fiercely. With that expression, Jian Wushuang made seals using his hands. Jian Wushuang then forcefully used 3 of his own blood essences to further increase his power. He barely met the minimum requirement to cast the 7th seal. Jian Wushuang used everything he had and every single drop of energy, as all of this power gushed into the seal up in the sky. A limitless amount of energy poured in. Finally, an even more gigantic province appeared from the picture scroll world and descended. Dun, 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 dun. Ancient chimes could be heard as they reverberated throughout heaven and earth. These chimes contained a special magic to it as it calmed everyone's mind. These chimes originated from the large province. At that instant, the entire battlefield fell silent. Dead silent. Every expert there looked up and stared at the gigantic and majestic province. Everyone held their breath. No one said a word. It was not because they did not want to speak. The pressure from the province was so great that no one could open their mouth. Furthermore, the majestic province did not target them, yet they were still under such incredible pressure. It would be hard to imagine how much pressure the Blood Emperor would be facing when the province targeted him. The 7th seal. Emperor 13 looked up and stared at the slowly descending province coldly. A flash of surprise could be seen from his emotionless eyes. Let me help you, Emperor 13 said. The sword in his hands started to glow bright. It was so bright it looked like a huge sun that was concentrated in energy. Emperor 13 swung his sword. He did not move at all. He pointed his sword at Blood Emperor. Instantly, the large sun, which was made up of sword essence, burst forth and appeared in the space where Blood Emperor was before it exploded. Hum, 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 hum. The entire space turned into a sea of sword essence. This sword essence spread out and crashed towards Blood Emperor from all directions. Blood Emperor received suppression from both the seventh seal and the sea of sword essence. Is this what we can do? Emperor 13 squinted his eyes. Blood Emperor looked at Emperor 13 coldly. Emperor 13. If I'm not wrong, this should be one of your 3 strongest sword skills, World of Swords. It is a pity that you are in the realm of half-step divine demon realm and the power of this sword is so limited. Chapter 2191 Last high back in the ancient past, Blood Emperor was one of the top-tier experts. Even though he could not be compared to a man like Emperor 13, he had still heard of the techniques Emperor 13 had. Emperor 13 had created 3 strongest sword skills. World of Swords was the weakest among them. Even this weakest sword skill could have severely injured or even killed him back in the ancient past. The legendary World of Sword had everything inside. Mountains, seas and forests made up of swords. However, the World of Swords that Emperor 13 had cast only barely formed an incomplete sea of swords. Ha! Blood Emperor laughed crazily. Mountain River Map, the 7th seal of the 9 province, sealed together with the World of Sword. Ha! Come. Why would I be afraid? Blood Emperor looked like he had turned crazy under the suppression of the 7th seal and the surrounding sea of swords. Blood Emperor felt that his life was in danger when targeted by the 7th seal. It was as though in the next moment he was about to be crushed into nothing by the 7th seal. However, the Blood Emperor was not afraid at all. He was the Emperor of the Blood Clan and had been one of the top-tier experts back in the ancient past. He had been through the great battle of the ancient past and survived. What could be more dangerous and terrifying than that battle itself? Taboo's secret skill, Blood Slash. First slash. Blood Emperor's voice boomed as the divine power around him boiled and roared. Blood Emperor shuddered as his face turned pale. Second slash. His voice could be heard again as the surrounding sea of crimson red split apart. The spirits and skeletons under the sea of crimson red crumbled. Blood Emperor felt something get stuck in his throat before he spouted out blood. Third slash. Heaven and earth froze for a second. Blood Emperor was covered in blood. One of his army exploded and turned into a mist of blood. Blood Clan Taboo's secret skill? Emperor 13's irises constricted with shock. Even though Blood Emperor looked like he was severely injured, Emperor 13 clearly knew he was not. Blood Emperor was in that state due to the price he had to pay to cast the Taboo's secret skill. Even though the cost was huge, Blood Emperor had turned even stronger. Opposing blood formation, form. Under the influence of the Taboo's secret skill, Blood Emperor, who was in the divine demon realm, had turned even stronger. His terrifying aura had become twice as powerful. The opposing blood formation that encompassed the entire 3 Emperors' world started to run. A limitless amount of blood chi gathered in front of the Blood Emperor and formed a crimson shield. This shield looked as though it could not be destroyed. Ha come. Blood Emperor laughed crazily. He stood behind the large shield as a gigantic crimson exotic beast rose and roared. High up in the air, the province formed from the 7th seal came down with incredible might. It collided with the crimson red shield. Large amounts of momentum gushed out in all directions. The 7th seal. Jian Wushuang gave all he had, crumbling 9 ancient god stars and even casting soul ignition to bet on this one attack. This was Jian Wushuang's last attack. After this attack he would definitely die. Blood Emperor had paid a heavy price by casting the Taboo's secret skill just to defend against the 7th seal. He knew that this was the last attack by Jian Wushuang. This was the last chance for Jian Wushuang to kill him. As long as Blood Emperor survived the attack, he could return back to his prime with the help of the opposing blood formation. The plan he had carefully planned for a long time could continue. No one could stop him. He must die. Jian Wushuang had gone crazy long ago. As soul ignition continued, his consciousness slowly started to fade as he turned into a mad demon. He would die eventually as all living energy would be sucked out of him. He told himself he had a mission, and he had to complete it before he died. That was to kill Blood Emperor. The eternal chaotic world would only be safe if he died. That was his hometown. His friends and families were there. He could not afford to fail. I carefully schemed for so many years and finally got to where I am today. How can I lose to a mere chaotic realm scum? No, that will not happen. That cannot happen. I will not die. Blood Emperor was equally crazy. Jian Wushuang had his reason to kill the Blood Emperor. Blood Emperor also had his reasons to live. Both of them fought head-on. Who would live? Who would die? Or would both of them die? The experts from the eternal chaotic world held their breath as they saw this scene unfold before their eyes. They saw the majestic province crashing into the Crimson Shield. These two terrifying and devastating forces were fighting against each other. At that moment, everyone clenched their fists. Kill him. He must die. Sword Emperor, our fate lies in your hands. The Sword Emperor has never disappointed us. This time, he too will not disappoint us. These were thoughts that were screaming in the minds of the experts. They knew that Jian Wushuang was their last hope. This attack was Jian Wushuang's last attempt. If Blood Emperor survived this attack, the eternal chaotic world would be done for. At the center of the battlefield, the two terrifying forces were still battling it out. During the collision, the power of both forces got weaker. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds. This collision lasted for 5 seconds. Finally, crack, a soft sound was heard. The eyes of the experts from the eternal chaotic world lit up with elation. They saw cracks forming on the seemingly indestructible crimson-red shield. Finally, the crimson-red shield shattered with a boom. The crimson-red shield that Blood Emperor formed using the opposing blood formation was gone. Chapter 2192A Figure broke. The crimson shield broke. Sword Emperor managed to break the opponent's strongest defense skill. Is he going to succeed? The experts from the eternal chaotic world were excited. No, it is not so simple. Even though this attack is extremely powerful, more than 70% of the power was used to break the Crimson Shield. Blood Emperor may be able to defend against the remaining power. He could be severely injured but not killed. Emperor Bai said. What? The experts around turned pale. Even after destroying the Crimson Shield, Blood Emperor could survive this attack? Oh no, it still lacks some power. Emperor 13-2 frowned. At the center of the battlefield, the seventh seal continued to descend on Blood Emperor. Blood Chi continued to erupt from Blood Emperor as the ancient blood beast roared in anger. The Blood Emperor laughed. Come, let's see if the remaining power from the seventh seal can kill me today. If I survive, all of you will die. Haha. His crazy laughter reverberated throughout the battlefield. The huge ancient blood beast held up its hands and held on tightly to the descending province. The majestic province descended extremely slowly under the resistance from the ancient blood beast. During the entire process, its power was continuously weakened. If this continued, the seal would not be able to kill the Blood Emperor after it destroyed the ancient blood beast. Sword Emperor gave his all and even cast soul ignition, yet he still failed to kill Blood Emperor? Is the eternal chaotic world done for? Looks like fate decided that the eternal chaotic world should perish today. Howls of bitterness could be heard from the experts from the eternal chaotic world. These experts had no hope left. Even Emperor Bai looked devastated. Jian Wushuang was their last hope. However, this last attack of his did not seem like it could kill Blood Emperor. As for Emperor 13, he could not kill Blood Emperor even though he had incredible fighting power. The Blood Emperor survived. That meant that they were dead meat. The eternal chaotic world was done for. Many different emotions surfaced. At the center of the battlefield, Jian Wushuang turned even more crazy as he lost his consciousness. His eyes were bloodshot as he stared straight at Blood Emperor. Right then, in the majestic province in front of him, a human figure appeared slowly. This figure appeared out of nowhere with no warning at all. The power of the seventh seal was about to run out. Yet a figure had appeared from within at this point in time. Once it appeared, everyone looked over at it. That is? The experts from the eternal chaotic world were stunned as they looked at the figure. It was a well-built man in white clothes. He was smiling brightly and warmly. It felt peaceful. He appeared out of nowhere and had no aura. It was like he was nothing but air. Once people looked at him, they could no longer look away. When he saw the figure who appeared out of nowhere, Blood Emperor frowned. He started to feel uncertain as the bad feeling turned even stronger. Emperor 13 too was looking at this human figure. This old man, he has got a backup plan. Emperor 13 muttered to himself in a voice only he could hear. As for Jian Wushuang, he was using all his strength to keep himself conscious. At the same time, he recognized this figure who had appeared. Us, Master. Jian Wushuang spoke with great difficulty. Us. Jian Wushuang had only had one master since the day he had started cultivating. This man was Xian Yi. Hi, little one. Xian Yi smiled and greeted Jian Wushuang. The warm smile caused Jian Wushuang to feel relaxed. Xian Yi then looked down at everyone. When he saw Emperor 13, a glint of surprise flashed over his eyes as he quickly moved his vision. Finally, he fixed his vision on Blood Emperor. A member of the Blood clan? Ha! This formation is interesting. It is a pity that this is too malicious. Xian Yi muttered to himself. At the same time, he noticed the 7th seal of the 9-province seal. There was only about 20% of power left in this seal. With this power, it could severely injure Blood Emperor. However, there was no way it could kill Blood Emperor. My disciple, your master shall help you today. Xian Yi said as he raised one of his arms slowly. On his right index figure, a special energy gathered as it flew towards Blood Emperor. It felt like the energy did not exist at all. He pointed his finger very casually. The experts around the battlefield were curious as to why Xian Yi had done that. They did not understand what the figure was trying to do. He pointed his finger at Blood Emperor? What was next? Why was there no power or momentum felt? The 7th seal of the 9-province seal did not get more powerful. It seemed like nothing had changed. While everyone was curious about why Xian Yi had done that, boom, the space shuddered. The heaven and earth that the experts were in started to crumble at an incredible speed. Yes, it crumbled. Large amounts of space started to collapse in on themselves. Even the earth started to sink. As for the opposing blood formation that covered the entire 3 Emperors world, it started to quickly dissipate and shrink as though it was being suppressed by a terrifying power. Within moments, the opposing blood formation, which covered the entire 3 Emperors world, shrank to the mere size of the Blood Emperor sanctuary grounds. And the shrinking had yet to stop. At the same time, a suppressive power far greater than what anyone had experienced before was felt. This non-specific suppressive power did not belong to any expert. It came from the heavens. It came from the earth. This suppressive power came from heaven and earth. It was the restrictions of heaven and earth. Chapter 2193 Finally Killed. Impossible! This is not possible! The Blood Emperor yelled hysterically. At that moment, Blood Emperor went mad. As the restrictions of heaven and earth came, his opposing blood formation dissipated straight away. The reason why he could be in the chaotic divine demon realm was due to the opposing blood formation. If the formation dissipated, his power would too. He was originally in the chaotic divine demon realm, before dropping to half-step divine demon realm instantly. He was now in the realm as Emperor 13. As his realm dropped, his overall power and the power of his techniques dropped. Impossible! My opposing blood formation has already shaken this world. Everything was originally peaceful and I was in the chaotic divine demon realm. Why did the restrictions of heaven and earth increase so suddenly? Blood Emperor widened his eyes in shock as his face twisted in anger. Soon, he locked his vision onto the figure that had just appeared. This is all because of you. The Blood Emperor stared at Xian Yi, who stood there smiling. Blood Emperor's irises constricted when he recalled what Xian Yi had just done to influence the restriction of heaven and earth. He could guess his true identity. It's you. It is you. You were that man back then? That is you. The restrictions of heaven and earth exist because of you. Blood Emperor roared in anger as he was in disbelief. While the Blood Emperor was in disbelief, the majestic province descended and crushed the ancient blood beast. The ancient blood beast had been created by the ancient blood beast, and its power was determined by that of the blood emperors. Blood Emperor had been in the chaotic divine demon realm before, hence the ancient blood beast was powerful. Now that the Blood Emperor was in the half-step divine demon, his power dropped and he could no longer cast many techniques. Under these circumstances, even Emperor 13 could kill him. This was the same for Jian Wushuang, who cast soul ignition and gave his all. As for the 7th seal of the 9-province seal, only about 10% of the total power remained after it crushed the ancient blood beast. However, this power was more than enough to kill the Blood Emperor, who was in the half-step divine demon realm. No! I will not resign myself to my fate. I will not. His yells reverberated throughout the battlefield. The majestic province descended onto the Blood Emperor and completely crushed him. Boom! The terrifying momentum continued to push the province downwards onto the earth. Once the two collided, abundant amounts of divine power swept out in all directions. After a long while, the battlefield turned peaceful once again. As for Blood Emperor, he lay there motionless. A top-tier expert from the ancient past died. He is finally dead? The experts from the eternal chaotic world widened their eyes as they looked at this scene. They had yet to fully comprehend what had just happened. They could not believe their own eyes. Their defeat seemed inevitable. However, the tides of the battle had turned right when Blood Emperor was about to win. After a brief delay, everyone looked up at the two figures floating high up in the air. The two figures were Jian Wushuang and Xian Yi. After the 7th seal of the 9-province seal dissipated, they realized that Xian Yi was simply a blurred mirage. Xian Yi moved forwards towards Jian Wushuang. Little one. Xian Yi smiled warmly. Jian Wushuang could barely keep his eyes open. His consciousness was fading. Xian Yi frowned slightly. He stretched out his palm and pointed to Jian Wushuang's forehead. A unique energy gushed into Jian Wushuang's brain. Instantly, what remaining soul power that Jian Wushuang had stopped burning under the influence of this unique energy. His soul fire was extinguished and a very small portion of his soul power remained. Seeing this, Xian Yi heaved a sigh of relief. Little one, you are too tired. Sleep well. Xian Yi said softly. Jian Wushuang smiled slightly, as though he had heard his master's words. It was a peaceful and relieved smile. Jian Wushuang fell backwards. Xian Yi waved his hand as an unknown force guided Jian Wushuang towards Emperor Bai. Emperor Bai caught Jian Wushuang and stared at Xian Yi with a meaningful look. Xian Yi smiled at Emperor Bai and muttered to himself, "The time is not yet right. It has yet to reach the decisive moment. Luckily, the amount of power I used is small. If not," he shook his head as his body turned transparent. It eventually disappeared from sight. Seeing this, the experts around were confused. They did not know who Xian Yi was, how he had appeared and why he had disappeared so suddenly. His appearance and disappearance were both without warning. In the eyes of the experts from the eternal chaotic world, Xian Yi was a complete mystery. Emperor 13 would probably be the only man who had the answer to this mystery. In the sky high up above, the beautiful picture scroll world disappeared as it turned into a scroll and fell towards the earth. A figure appeared and caught the mountain river map. This man was Emperor 13. Emperor 13 then appeared in front of Emperor Bai. How is he? Emperor 13 looked at Jian Wushuang's motionless body and asked. He is in a terrible state. Even though his divine body is unharmed, he has used too much of his soul power and only a small amount remains. He should fall into a deep slumber, Emperor Bai said in a serious tone. This phenomenon should only have appeared in the ancient past. Some experts from the ancient past had control and usage of powerful soul attacks which could severely wound the soul. If the soul was wounded to a certain extent, it would fall into a deep slumber. It was extremely difficult to wake up from this slumber. Even though he fell into deep slumber, at least his life was preserved. This is all thanks to that man just now who helped to stop soul ignition. If not, Emperor Bai exclaimed. Chapter 2194 Victory. The surrounding experts from the eternal chaotic world took a sharp breath when they heard what Emperor Bai had said. To them, once you cast soul ignition, You were destined for doom. There was no way to stop it. However, that man just now had managed to stop Jian Wushuang's soul ignition and protect a part of his soul. How incredible was that? Emperor 13 looked at Jian Wushuang before tossing the mountain river map and a transmission token over. This is his transmission token. Additionally, that is my transmission token. After he awakens from his deep slumber, ask him to message me, Emperor 13 said coldly. Emperor Bai received the 2 items. Since Jian Wushuang was in a deep slumber, he would safely keep these items first. Additionally, this is what I promised. Emperor 13 tossed him a jade bamboo strip. Emperor Bai caught it and took a glance. His eyes lit up in surprise. There was a secret skill carved into the jade bamboo strip. It was the complete version of one of the secret skills he was currently cultivating. Back at the lineage of Star, Emperor 13 had seen that Emperor Bai was cultivating an incomplete secret skill. He had told Emperor Bai that he would give him the complete version of the secret skill if Emperor Bai could take care of Jian Wushuang for a period of time. Thank you. Emperor Bai thanked Emperor 13. Emperor 13 looked at Emperor Bai indifferently before leaving. After Emperor 13 left, the experts from the eternal chaotic world surrounded Emperor Bai. Everyone was looking at Jian Wushuang. Sword Emperor. What happened to the ancient god Emperor? People like King Qinxing, Abysmal Saint Master and Black Dragon Emperor were extremely worried. This was especially the case for Black Dragon Emperor, as her feelings for Jian Wushuang had never changed. Everyone calmed down. Jian Wushuang's soul was wounded and he went into a deep slumber. As long as there are enough treasures, he can recover. It's just a matter of time. Emperor Bai said. Hearing this, everyone heaved a sigh of relief. Emperor Bai, the master of the Holocaust sect, escaped, Ancestor Tianqin said. Emperor Bai raised his eyebrows and looked at the space that she was in. The beautiful figure which was standing there disappeared. Let her go. She should be from the first era. Now that the 3 Emperor's World's factions are destroyed, I doubt she can cause any trouble for us, Emperor Bai said. Tianqin, what are the losses we suffered during this battle? More than half were either severely injured or dead. 7 of our great emperors died in the battle. They are Purple Moon Emperor, Master Wu, Yanzun, King Zhanzong. Ancestor Tianqin read out 7 names. These were the 7 emperors who had died in this battle. On top of that, many Sir Gods and Emperor Gods had died as well. The total number of lives lost was over 2,000. Hearing this, the experts present fell silent. Emperor Bai took a deep breath and said, They are the heroes of the eternal chaotic world. Yes, heroes. They sacrificed their lives for the eternal chaotic world. Without their sacrifice, the eternal chaotic world would not be around now. The experts around nodded their heads in agreement. Even though we suffered heavy losses during this battle, we won. The eternal chaotic world laughed. Hearing this, the experts who were down were stunned for a moment before they started to smile. Victory! They were victorious. All of the experts from the 3 Emperors' world were dead. The 3 Emperors' world had crumbled and would no longer pose a threat to the eternal chaotic world. The Holocaust sect and the Acheron Palace had been 2 threats that lurked in the dark. Now these 2 threats were gone. Let's go. Let us go home. Everyone discussed for a moment before they cleaned up the battlefield and left for home. Eternal chaotic world. After the final phase of the war erupted, the eternal chaotic world was at the edge of destruction. The countless cultivators and humans that remained within the eternal chaotic world were unsteady and worried. After the army returned, news of the victory spread like wildfire. Victory! This war had cost the eternal chaotic world dearly, but they had eventually achieved the final victory. After the news spread, the entire eternal chaotic world was celebrating in ecstasy. Many people who had been worried sick finally heaved a sigh or relief. Green Fire World within Wushuang City. Wushuang! Brother! Jian Nantian, Wang Yuan, Su Rou and many others looked at the weak Jian Wushuang and were worried sick. The experts who had participated in this war were mainly from the eternal chaotic world, as Green Fire World only had one almighty, Jian Nantian. He was far too important to the Green Fire World and did not participate in this war. Emperor Bai, how is Jian Wushuang? Wang Yuan asked anxiously. His soul fell into deep slumber. He is in a terrible state, but his life is not in danger, Emperor Bai said. His soul fell into a deep slumber? Wang Yuan frowned. He was the most powerful alchemist in the Green Fire world. His standard was also considered top tier within the eternal chaotic world. He was well versed in this area. However, only when one's soul was severely wounded would they fall into a deep slumber. Even though his life is not at risk, Jian Wushuang could possibly slumber for the rest of his life if he is not awakened quickly, Wang Yuan said. This was the same for many of the experts from the ancient past. Some of the experts' souls had been severely wounded back in the ancient past. Many of them had fallen into deep slumber and could not wake. No worries. I ordered my men to prepare the necessary materials. I have also called some of the Master's information from the Sanctuary Alliance to prepare the Tying Soul Resurrection Formation. Green Fire World is abundant in spiritual influence of heaven and earth. It is most suitable to place the Tying Soul Resurrection Formation here. As long as Jian Wushuang stays within the formation, his recovery should be speedy, Emperor Bai said. Chapter 2195 Deep Slumber. Emperor Bai made it sound very simple. In reality, even though the Tying Soul Resurrection Formation and Spiritual Pool were both extremely helpful in the recovery of one's soul power, it was not easy to set up. Tying Soul Resurrection Formation originated from the ancient past. At least 10 Masters of Formation were needed to form this formation. Furthermore, large amounts of resources were needed to keep this formation running. These resources could come in the forms of special power stones. However, unless the power stone was like that of the Supreme Emperor Stone, a large amount of these special power stones would be needed to keep the formation running. The Sanctuary Alliance could not bear such a cost. Hence, Emperor Bai commanded around 200 Almighty to stay there at the Wushuang city. They would provide divine power to keep the Tying Soul Resurrection Formation running. As for the spiritual pool, it sounds ordinary. However, for the spiritual pool to be of use to Jian Wushuang, large amounts of treasures and resources were needed, though the amount was much less than that required to open the Heaven Repairing Palace. As of the current ability of the Sanctuary Alliance, time was needed to prepare these resources. The cost was huge and the process was extremely complicated. No matter as Emperor Bai, nor any other Almighties, were unwilling to put in the effort. The person who needed this was Jian Wushuang, the man who they owed the most to in this war. Jian Wushuang had risked it all, even his life, to kill the Blood Emperor. They would give it their all as long as there was even the slightest of hope for him to recover. Besides the Tying Soul Resurrection Formation and Spiritual Pool, we should prepare some elixir which helps in the recovery of soul power. However, such elixirs are rare and extremely difficult to make. We need to prepare, Emperor Bai said. I have elixirs which help in the recovery in soul power, Wang Yuan said. What type of elixir? Emperor Bai looked at Wang Yuan in surprise. Ice Soul Elixir, Wang Yuan said. Emperor Bai raised his eyebrows. Ice Soul Elixir was one of the more powerful elixirs that there was. This elixir was basically extinct in the eternal chaotic world. No one could create it. This ordinary-looking fat man could create the Ice Soul Elixir? How many of the Ice Soul Elixir do you have now? Emperor Bai asked. As of now, I only have 3. Wang Yuan whipped out a small bottle which contained 3 crystal-clear elixir. After looking at the elixir and smelling its fragrance, Emperor Bai was sure that it was an extremely pure Ice Soul Elixir. 3 is too little, Emperor Bai frowned and said. Too little? It is all right. As long as I have sufficient materials, I can make more of these, Wang Yuan said. You can make Ice Soul Elixir? Emperor Bai was in disbelief. No alchemist master in the eternal chaotic world could create the Ice Soul Elixir, but this fat man here could? Emperor Bai might not know about this. Wang Yuan is Wushuang's brother. He has the unique constitution of being the celestial elixir. He received an opportunity in the ancient battlefield around the Green Fire world and mastered many techniques to create elixirs that existed in the ancient past. He indeed possesses incredible skills as an alchemist, Jian Nentian said. Celestial elixir was a unique constitution that every alchemist master dreamed of having. Furthermore, he had received an opportunity from the ancient past. Emperor Bai looked at Wang Yuan in a different light. He knew that even though this little fat man was a mere chaotic real god, every major faction in the eternal chaotic world would have died to have him join their factions. This was the same for the Sanctuary Alliance. I will ask my men to prepare the necessary materials to create the Ice Soul Elixir. I will leave the making of the elixir to you. I hope you can make at least one every decade, Emperor Bai said. One every 10 years? Wang Yuan was stunned. The Ice Soul Elixir was a high-grade elixir from the ancient past. It was not easy even for him. If he needed to make one every 10 years. Is there a problem? Emperor Bai asked. No problem. For my brother, I will make it happen even if he needs one every year. At most, starting from today, I will not eat nor drink, just spend all my time making the elixir until Wushuang wakes up, Wang Yuan said as he shook his head. Hearing this, Emperor Bai nodded his head slowly. Soon, the entire Sanctuary Alliance started to work. They neglected everything else and managed to form the basic structure of the Taiying Soul Resurrection Formation and Spiritual Pool. Wang Yuan started to make elixir. This time, he would be spending the most time on one job ever since he was born. Sanctuary Alliance, Green Fire World and everyone of Jian Wushuang's family and friends gave it their all to ensure that the formation and the spiritual pool were running smoothly. Everyone was giving their all for Jian Wushuang. Meanwhile, Jian Wushuang lay peacefully in the middle of the spiritual pool, in a deep slumber. While Jian Wushuang was in a deep slumber, somewhere in the eternal chaotic world, in an endless and dark void, a beautiful figure was rushing somewhere. She had a perfect figure. She wore a veil and looked like she was a fairy. She made her way forward. Suddenly she stopped in her tracks. What? Leng Ruxue raised her head and looked forward to her beautiful iris. There stood a man in a white cloak. The cloak looked like it was made of snow. He was handsome and cold yet arrogant. He stood there in the air, radiating no aura. It was like he was made of air. Emperor 13. Leng Ruxue saw the man as she clenched her jaws. During the battle in the Blood Emperor Sanctuary grounds, she had not attacked at all. When she had realized that Blood Emperor was about to die, she had turned and escaped immediately. She was far away from the experts from the eternal chaotic world. She had left promptly and no one could catch up to her. However, not long after she had left the Three Emperors world, Emperor 13 had appeared in front of her. Chapter 2196 You are too controlling. After a deep breath, Leng Ruxue gave a modest look. Greetings, Emperor 13. I am Leng Ruxue. Emperor 13 looked at Leng Ruxue coldly without saying a word. Leng Ruxue was nervous. She was fearful of Emperor 13. He had managed to shake the restrictions of heaven and earth and reach the half-step divine demon realm with his own power. Back in the ancient past, he had been even more powerful. He could solo the master of Holy Land and could go even against the being that supported Leng Ruxue. If Emperor 13 wanted to kill her, there was nothing she could do. From the myths, Emperor 13 would never kill a weakling. To him, I am just someone insignificant who was born at this age. He would not kill me. Furthermore, he was on Jian Wushuang's side and helped Jian Wushuang during his time of need. Within my body, I suppressed that woman's consciousness. If he really tried anything funny, I could simply commit suicide with her. If that happened, he would not be able to face Jian Wushuang. Leng Ruxue thought to herself as she calmed down. She believed that Emperor 13 would not kill her. Suddenly, Emperor 13, who stood there peacefully, raised his right hand and pointed at her. This action looked very casual. However, heaven and earth shook as the space was ripped apart. An enormous fault in heaven and earth appeared. This fault continued to expand at terrifying speed. 1,000 feet, 10,000 feet, 100,000 feet, 1,000,000 feet. This cracked sped towards her. Oh no! Leng Ruxue turned pale. Right when she thought Emperor 13 would not have done anything funny to try and kill her, he attacked. Instantly, Leng Ruxue was radiating an unique aura. This aura was at the power level of a stage 3 great emperor. Her jet black hair turned white and her irises turned gray. When Lung Rushue was about to deflect the sword from Emperor 13, the humongous crack disappeared. The terrifying sword essence dissipated. The entire space was peaceful, except for the destructive aura that she was radiating. Emperor 13 stood there, surprised. Lung Rushue looked at Emperor 13, confused. Emperor 13 was not trying to kill her. That sword was to test Lung Rushue. As for why? White hair, gray irises. Destiny constitution. No wonder. The only reason you can reach such a stage within such a short time is because of that person helping you. Lung Rushue frowned. She knew who Emperor 13 was referring to. Her unique constitution was only linked to that being. Seeing that Lung Rushue did not say anything in defense, Emperor 13 said once again, "Tell this to the person behind you. She is too controlling of the things she should not be. If she does not stop in time, I will stop her one way or another." Emperor 13 turned around and left. Lung Rushue stared at Emperor 13's back coldly. A few days later, Lung Rushue reached a unique mystery land. Sanctuary Alliance had no idea that the Holocaust sect had complete control over this mystery land. At the depth of the mystery land, there was a majestic altar. Lung Rushue squeezed a blood essence from her index finger as it dripped onto the secret restrictions on the altar. The entire altar started to run. Within moments, a blurry figure appeared on this altar. This blurry figure was over 2 meters tall and her facial expressions could not be seen clearly. From the looks of it, the figure belonged to a beautiful female. "Master," Lung Rushue said as she saluted the figure. "Blood Emperor failed?" A soft and graceful voice was heard. "Yes," Lung Rushue nodded her head lightly. "Ha! This is within my predictions." That Damas. Does he really think a formation can shake the restrictions of heaven and earth here? What a joke! Has he ever thought about who made the restrictions of heaven and earth? Even the other 2 masters of Holy Land cannot do so with all their might. Who is he to try? The blurry figure mocked. The blurry figure looked down on Blood Emperor. It was not just because of the Blood Emperor's weak fighting power. More importantly, it was because he was arrogant. He did not know the true power of the restrictions. "Master, during the battle, Emperor 13 was there," Lung Rushue continued. "Emperor 13? The blurry figure said with a deeper voice as she treated this more seriously. She did not care about a mere Blood Emperor. However, it was a different case when it came to Emperor 13. Has Emperor 13 awakened? Looks like those experts who were in slumber in that heaven and earth are all about to wake up," the blurry figure sighed. "Master, Emperor 13 came over and found me alone. He knows about your existence. He asked me to pass you a message," Lung Rushue said. "Speak," the blurry figure said. "He wants me to tell you that you are too controlling of some things that you shouldn't be. If you do not stop, he will, one way or another," Lung Rushue said. "How dare he?" The blurry figure was instantly enraged. "Even the old owner of the 7-star Black sect would not dare to say that to me. Emperor 13, you got courage." "Who is he to say that?" Lung Rushue stood there, quietly listening. Even though the blurry figure was enraged, there was nothing she could do. The blurry figure looked down at her right arm. If her original body had been there and she lifted up her sleeve, a clear sword scar would have been seen. Even though the scar was not large, it represented the greatest disgrace in her life. That was exactly the reason why she had kept the sword scar on her arm and refused to let it heal. Emperor 13 was the one who had left the sword scar there. "Emperor 13, you should feel lucky that the restrictions of heaven and earth are far too powerful there. I cannot go there personally. If not, I would personally tear you to bits." The blurry figure yelled before she looked over at Lung Rushue. "Disciple, tell this to those who are about to awaken. 30,000 years later, heaven's horizon. That is their only chance." Chapter 2197 Old Monsters in Deep Slumber. 30,000 years later, heaven's horizon. That is their only chance. Once the blurry figure said these words, the figure disappeared from the altar. Lung Rushue stood there, excited. After hearing what the blurry figure said, she thought to herself, 30,000 years. Is the time finally coming? These old monsters have waited for this for all eternity. She smiled creepily before she left. Within the eternal chaotic world, there were many dangerous places. The most dangerous was undoubtedly the 8 layers. Even though the 8 layers were extremely dangerous, there were many opportunities within. The 8 layers was one of the best places for experts to venture into. After the battlefield from the ancient past was revealed, many of the experts from the eternal chaotic world went to venture into the ancient mystery land or the battlefield around Green Fire World. The 8 layers were neglected. Only some of the real gods who could not venture into the ancient battlefield would choose to venture into the 8 layers. Within the 8 layers, the 6th layer. The 6th layer was one of the most infamous places. Many of the experts higher than the realm of Sir God dared not venture in. The Buddhist Demon Sea was one of the most notorious places. Back when Jian Wushuang had been set up by the Acheron Palace, he had entered Buddhist Demon Sea in order to save Lei Chao. He was lucky as he had received help from experts and managed to survive. After what happened, Jian Wushuang knew that there were 2 experts from the ancient past residing there in slumber. One of the 2 experts was One-Star Man. The other man had an ancient flood dragon and had tried to kill Jian Wushuang. These 2 experts resided in the Buddhist Demon Sea. On this day, a beautiful figure stepped foot into the Buddhist Demon Sea. This beautiful figure was Leng Rushue. Buddhist Demon Sea. Is that man still in slumber here? Leng Rushue looked at the endless sea and thought to herself. Those experts who had survived from the ancient battlefield usually slumbered in the ancient battlefields. For example, the ancient mystery land. Many experts from the ancient past chose those places for their slumbers. There were exceptions, of course. The battle back then had been so fierce that the entire ancient battlefield had been spread throughout this world. The Buddhist Demon Sea was one of them. Leng Rushue did not hesitate and continued to head deep into the Buddhist Demon Sea. The Buddhist Demon Sea was very dangerous. However, Leng Rushue was a stage 3 great emperor. Soon she reached the depth of the sea. Here, it was covered in black mist. The black mist contained unimaginable corrosive power. At the deepest part of the Buddhist Demon Sea, even a great emperor would find it difficult to stop the corrosive power. Leng Rushue floated there, motionless. Right then, in the sea below, a large wave erupted as a black figure rose and appeared behind Leng Rushue. This black figure was an ancient flood dragon. His whole body was covered in black scales which radiated death. Its mouth opened as it bit Leng Rushue with its 2 sharp teeth. Leng Rushue stood there. She noticed that the ancient flood dragon was attacking her, but she did not bother dodging or defending herself from the attack. Right when Leng Rushue was about to be bitten by the ancient flood dragon, she yelled, "Old monster dragon, do you wish to be trapped here in the Buddhist Demon Sea forever?" Her voice filled the entire Buddhist Demon Sea. The ancient flood dragon stopped in its tracks. The teeth of the dragon were about to touch Leng Rushue. However, it stopped and dared not move another inch forward. Leng Rushue turned around slowly as she looked at the ancient flood dragon coldly. There was no fear in her eyes. The ancient flood dragon was very fierce and savage. However, under the stare of Leng Rushue, it backed off and closed its mouth. On the back of the ancient flood dragon, a blurry figure formed. He had black armor and an extremely violent aura. His eyes were like those of a venomous snake as he looked at Leng Rushue. "Little brat, who are you?" The blurry figure, who was Old Monster Dragon, said with a deep voice. Leng Rushue did not reply. Her hair turned white and her irises turned gray instantly. A terrifying aura of destruction swept out in all directions. White-haired and gray irises. "You are that person's?" Old Monster Dragon was shocked. His attitude instantly turned for the battle. "I am sorry that I scared you, little girl," he said as he stomped on the ancient flood dragon, as though he was punishing it. Leng Rushue stood there coldly, not saying a thing. "Little girl, you came today under that person's orders?" Old Monster Dragon asked nervously. "Humph, my master wants me to tell you this. 30,000 years later, heaven's horizon. That is one and only chance. If you miss it," Leng Rushue grunted. She turned around and left, completely ignoring Old Monster Dragon. On the vast ocean, the ancient flood dragons float there. Old Monster Dragon stood on his dragon, stunned. He was completely stunned. Soon he regained his composure. Haha. Finally. Finally. How long has it been? I can finally leave this terrible place. 30,000 years, the last 30,000 years. His crazy laughter was like letting go of his helplessness over these years. It contained some sadness as his laughter reverberated throughout the vast ocean. However, in the Buddhist demon sea, there was more than one person who was in a slumber. One Star Man was there too. When Leng Rushue appeared there, One Star Man realized her presence. When Old Monster Dragon laughed, One Star Man had a complicated look. 30,000 years? Those old men in a slumber must be excited. Looks like it is time for me to get out of this place and see some sunlight. There were numerous guards constantly protecting the spiritual pool. They were led by Jian Wushuang's servant, Jin E. This was to ensure that no one would get in the way of Jian Wushuang's recovery. Emperor Bai, Jian Nantian, Wang Yuan, Su Rou and Hall Master Yuan stood in front of the spiritual pool. Emperor Bai was looking at Jian Wushuang, who lay motionless and peaceful in the spiritual pool. A small amount of spiritual power swept towards Jian Wushuang as it was used to scan his consciousness see. This spiritual power was not destructive nor invasive. It simply scanned Jian Wushuang's consciousness see before dissipating. Emperor Bai, how is he? Jian Nantian asked. If I'm not wrong, his soul has completely recovered, Emperor Bai said. Recovered? Jian Nantian was elated. Awesome! Wang Yuan and Su Rou were all excited. Since his soul has completely recovered, why is he still asleep? Su Rou asked. His soul will only fall into a deep slumber once it has been injured like never before. This state is extremely dangerous as any small accidents could cause him to remain in slumber for all eternity. Even though his soul has completely recovered, we never know when he will regain consciousness. It might take a year or two. However, it might even take 100,000 years, or even 1,000,000. Is that the case? Jian Nantian, Wang Yuan and the rest turned pale. They had underestimated how dangerous it was for one's soul to fall into deep slumber. The experts who were in deep slumber from the ancient past would have awakened long ago if all it took for an expert in slumber to awaken was for their soul to recover completely. Let us wait a little more. Continue to feed him the ice soul elixir and let him remain within the spiritual pool. Even though we do not know for sure when he will awaken, his soul power will definitely become much more powerful once he awakens. These things will only benefit him, Emperor Bai said before he left. Jian Nantian and the rest were disappointed. All they could do now was wait. As time passed, the quality and quantity of the resources within the green fire world increased and became better. The cultivating atmosphere was also optimal, and hence numerous experts were born. There were originally 6 Almighties. Soon after, the 7th and 8th Almighty came about. In the 10,000s year Jian Wushuang was in slumber, there were a total of 12 Almighties within the green fire world. In the next 1,000 years, there was another leap in numbers. Within this 1,000 years, there were a total of 5 new Almighties. Among the 5 were 2 who had unique constitutions. They were very talented and it seemed likely that they could reach the Emperor God realm, or even the Great Emperor realm. During the same 1,000 years, one man managed to break through to the realm of Emperor God. This man was Jian Nantian. He was the second man to reach the Emperor God realm, the first being Jian Wushuang. Everyone thought that it would take longer for him to break through into this realm. No one expected him to break through again within 20,000 years. Chapter 2199 Awaken. The birth of the first Emperor God had brought about a leap in overall power of the green fire world. Jian Nanshan's breakthrough had also reaffirmed that the green fire world had great potential as the experts from the various factions within the eternal chaotic world took great note of this place. At the rate of growth it was having, the green fire world would become an incredible place. The experts were extremely envious and had even greater desire to enter this place. However, due to the agreement that the factions and Jian Wushuang had, no one dared to enter the cities. After all, the Green Fire World was the birthplace of the Sword Emperor. And the Sword Emperor was a legend. He was one of the most powerful men within the eternal chaotic world. During the Great Battle 10 of thousands years ago, he had single-handedly turned the tides of the battle and won it for the eternal chaotic world. Even the great emperors within the Sanctuary Alliance feared and respected him and followed the agreement to never step foot into the Green Fire World. It was impossible for the ordinary experts within the eternal chaotic world to try anything funny. Green Fire World continued to grow progressively. Time continued to pass. Within the Wushuang city, Jian Wushuang lay in the spiritual pool motionlessly. Right then, Jian Wushuang's finger and eyelids trembled slightly before he finally opened his eyes. Awakened. Jian Wushuang finally awakened from his deep slumber. Where am I? Jian Wushuang looked around, confused. He saw that he was submerged within a pool of water with unique properties. He had no idea how this spiritual pool had come about. His last memory was of the battlefield years ago. I remember that I cast Soul Ignition and tried to use the 7th seal of the 9-province seal in an attempt to kill the Blood Emperor. It was a pity that it failed. Then, Master appeared. Jian Wushuang recalled seeing Xian Yi. Xian Yi appeared suddenly during that battle. He merely recalled that Xian Yi had appeared. He had no idea what had happened after, as his consciousness had started to fade from the aftereffects from Soul Ignition. He also had no idea what had happened during the time he had been asleep. He only knew he had slept. He had slept peacefully and soundly. He had no worries and no distractions. He simply went into a deep slumber. It was the best sleep he had ever had. I wondered what happened after I went into the deep slumber. The Blood Emperor should have been killed back then, Jian Wushuang muttered to himself as he surveyed the area. He knew that he had slept for a considerable amount of time. Since he was alive, the eternal chaotic world should have won that war and Blood Emperor should be dead by now. If the Blood Emperor was still around, the eternal chaotic world would have been destroyed and he would be dead. Huh? Jian Wushuang raised his eyebrows in surprise. What happened? My soul power, the power it contains. Jian Wushuang could clearly sense that his soul was completely different. It was so much more powerful and had much more tenacity. His soul power had previously barely reached the level of a stage 2 great emperor. It was rare to find someone with soul power at that level in the eternal chaotic world. However, it was nothing compared to people like Blood Emperor and other experts at that level. However, Jian Wushuang's current soul power was at least 10 times more powerful. Yes, 10 times. It had barely reached the level of a stage 2 great emperor previously. Now, his soul power was at the level of a peak stage 3 great emperor. How can this be? My soul was almost burnt up. How can it be that my soul recovered and got so much stronger? Jian Wushuang was in disbelief. However, he would not be surprised if he knew how magical the formation and spiritual pool surrounding him was, and how many ice soul elixir he had taken. Both the Taiying Soul Resurrection Formation and the spiritual pool were made at a huge cost. This cost was far greater than Jian Wushuang could have imagined. With both of these working together to help Jian Wushuang repair his soul, it would have been weird if he did not recover and come back stronger. Most important was the Ice Soul Elixir. This elixir was used by experts back in the ancient past to make their soul stronger. Even back in the ancient past, the Ice Soul Elixir was rare. In this era, this elixir was almost extinct. It had a great effect in making one's soul much more powerful than before. One Ice Soul Elixir was already very helpful for any great emperor. On a normal day, the Almighty within the eternal chaotic world had to pay a huge price just to get an elixir similar to that of the Ice Soul Elixir. However, Jian Wushuang had a good brother, Wang Yuan, who had helped him make Ice Soul Elixir as easily as making beans. Jian Wushuang had been fed one every now and then. How many Ice Soul Elixir had he taken over all these years of slumber? The number would be terrifying. It would have been weird if his soul power had not grown so much. Back then during the battle, my soul power was only at the level of a stage 2 great emperor. However, I could threaten a stage 3 great emperor like Demon King Chenyu when I cast soul attack with the help of the soul swallowing pearl and the 3 divine lights secret skill. Now that my soul power is so much stronger, how strong will my soul attack be? I think no one in the realm of the great emperor can stop it. Even Emperor Bai. Jian Wushuang looked confused. Emperor Bai was a very powerful man that could reach the battle power of a chaotic divine demon. However, his soul might not be that powerful. I want to try if I have the chance. Jian Wushuang smiled. He stood up from the spiritual pool and walked out of the formation. Wushuang City was located on a vast empty land. Wang Yuan sat lazily on a bench and leaned on the tree behind him. In front of Wang Yuan, Hall Master Yuan was stood casually. Beside him was another blurry figure. That blurry figure was a consciousness incarnation, and the owner was a powerful emperor god. This emperor god stood in front of Wang Yuan modestly. Chapter 2200 Master Wang, I have prepared all the materials needed to make the fiery purple dragon howl elixir, including the blood essence. You see, the elder man with brown hair said, fiery purple dragon howl elixir is a high-level elixir. Even though I can make it, it will not be easy, Wang Yuan said lazily. The elder with brown hair was an emperor god and understood what Wang Yuan meant and smiled. Don't worry, Master Wang. I have prepared millions of doctrine gems and other special materials as thanks for your service, Hall Master Yuan. Hall Master Yuan waved his hand as a Qian Kuan ring appeared. This ring had been prepared by the elder man in brown hair, and he passed it to Hall Master Yuan and asked him to bring it into Wushuang City. This place was part of the Green Fire world, and the elder man could not enter personally. He could only send a consciousness embodiment in. A consciousness embodiment could not bring a Qian Kuan ring in. Doctrine gems were packed densely within this ring and stacked as high as a mountain. There were also many other treasures. These were high-level treasures which were required to make many high-level elixirs. Wang Yuan scanned the Qian Kuan ring casually before he continued. It is not easy to make the fiery purple dragon howl elixir. I will try my best to make one for you since you are so sincere. However, I cannot be sure I can make it in one try. If I fail, the set of materials will go to waste. You will need to prepare a few more sets of raw materials. Master Wang, you are right. I have thought of this, hence I prepared 3 sets of raw materials, the elder man replied. 3 sets? That is too little. I need at least 5 sets of materials, and I can guarantee you 1 fiery purple dragon howl elixir, Wang Yuan said. 5. The elder man's face twitched. The fiery purple dragon howl elixir was of a very high level, on par with the ice soul elixir. The materials of these elixirs were not cheap. He did not have the ability to throw in tremendous resources to search for the raw materials, unlike Sanctuary Alliance, in order to help Jian Wushuang to awaken from his slumber. Even so, there were insufficient raw materials. Wang Yuan could make around 10 of such elixirs with 1 set of raw materials thanks to his ever-improving and professional alchemy skills. This elder man was a mere emperor god. It took him tremendous effort to search for these 3 sets of raw materials. 2 more sets? The elder man looked at Wang Yuan with his fists clenched. He knew clearly that the fiery purple dragon howl elixir was of a similar difficulty level to the ice soul elixir. With Wang Yuan's alchemist skills, he could definitely make at least 1 elixir with 3 sets of materials. Him wanting 3 sets meant that he wanted to reap more benefits. Even so, there was nothing he could do. He desperately needed the fiery purple dragon howl elixir. Even though within the eternal chaotic world, there were ways passed down from the ancient past to make this elixir, few alchemists could make it. He tried to ask another alchemist to make this elixir for him. The other alchemist too asked for great amounts of resources and treasures. Furthermore, the other alchemist asked for 10 sets of raw materials to guarantee the return of 1 elixir. Wang Yuan's request seemed decent given that other alchemists had asked for even more benefits to make the same elixir. The elder man looked at Hall Master Yuan pleadingly. Hall Master Yuan smiled subtly before he said, Mr. Wang Yuan, Emperor God Jin Luo took tens of thousands of years to gather 3 sets of raw materials. It would be difficult for him to find another 2 more sets. Hence, understood. Give me 4 sets of raw materials. I should be able to make 1 fiery purple dragon howl elixir if I give it my all. Hearing this, Hall Master Yuan nodded his head and said no more. The elder man knitted his eyebrows. It would not be easy for him to gather even one more set of raw materials. If you cannot prepare 4 sets of raw materials, I am sorry to say that I cannot help you, Wang Yuan said. No. I just need some time. I will go prepare now, the elder man said. Once you are done with the preparations, pass the materials to Hall Master Yuan. I will inform you once I am free and successfully make your elixir. Nowadays, I am busy making the Ice Soul elixir for my brother. The faster you prepare, the faster I can plan my schedule, Wang Yuan said. Yes, the elder man nodded his head in a hurry, afraid that Wang Yuan would regret his decision. Oh yes, leave the Qian Kuan ring behind, Wang Yuan said. The brown-haired elder man left the ring behind and left, distressed. After the elder man left, Mr. Wang Yuan, you have just made an excellent deal. With your alchemist skills, 1 set of raw materials is more than enough to make 1 fiery purple dragon howl elixir. Now you will get 4 sets, with an additional 1 million doctrine gems and numerous treasures. I am afraid no one within the eternal chaotic world can match your speed in obtaining resources and treasures, Hall Master Yuan smiled. Back in the ancient worlds with my brothers, my family ran a trading corporation. I know how to maximize the benefits for myself in a trade, Wang Yuan laughed. He was not afraid that the elder man would not meet his conditions. In the eternal chaotic world, no one would dare to call themselves the best alchemist if they declared themselves second. It was because he received a big opportunity in the ancient battlefield. He had managed to get the legacy from the ancient past, and he knew how to make many elixirs from the ancient past. After this news spread, his life had been very smooth sailing. There would be almighties, even great emperors who would find him and ask him to make some elixirs for them, though it came with a great price. Wang Yuan and Hall Master Yuan chatted casually, unaware that there was a man behind them listening to whatever they said. Wang Yuan, you are leading quite a good life. A gentle voice appeared as Jian Wushuang walked out, smiling. Of course, my life is, Wang Yuan replied instinctively before he stopped. His eyes widened in surprise. This voice sounded very familiar. Chapter 2201 Jian Wushuang's Awakening, Brother. Wang Yuan turned around and stared at Jian Wushuang. Palace Master. Hall Master Yuan was pleasantly surprised. It is me. Took both of you some time to recognize me, Jian Wushuang smiled. Oh God, yes. You finally awakened. Wang Yuan charged at Jian Wushuang and gave him a bear hug. From what I have heard, it looks like I have been in slumber for a long time. Furthermore, your alchemist skills have improved greatly, am I right? Jian Wushuang smiled. Of course. I am now the best alchemist in the eternal chaotic world, Wang Yuan said triumphantly. The best in the eternal chaotic world? Are you really that good? Jian Wushuang was surprised. Palace Master, Mr. Wang Yuan indeed possesses incredible alchemist skills. The reason why your soul could recover so quickly was because he made numerous Ice Soul elixir for you, Hall Master Yuan said. Oh. Jian Wushuang looked at Wang Yuan. Let's not talk about this. It is wonderful that you finally awakened from your slumber. They'll gather everyone else. Wang Yuan started transmitting messages. Jian Wushuang did not stop Wang Yuan. Soon, the message got through to Jian Nantian, Ji Wumeng, Su Rou, Lin Lan, He Xiu, Xueling Tian, and many other people who were close to Jian Wushuang. Wushuang. Jian Nantian and his wife looked at their son, elated. Dad, Mum, I'm not a good child. I made both of you worry, Jian Wushuang apologized. It is okay. You have awakened. Jian Nantian did not blame him and heaved a sigh of relief. He took the most pride in his son. Jian Wushuang was not only the backbone of the Green Fire world, but also of the eternal chaotic world. Jian Wushuang then greeted Su Rou and the remaining people. He was surprised that many of his close friends had become much stronger. Wang Yuan had already been an extremely skilled alchemist before the Great Battle, though he was still far from being the best alchemist. Even though not everyone agreed that Wang Yuan was the best alchemist, he was confident that he was. His alchemist skills had improved greatly, seeing the attitude of the brown-haired elder man when he was requesting for Wang Yuan's service. His father, Jian Nantian, had previously been in the realm of Sir God. Now, he was in the realm of Emperor God. Su Ro and Xueling Tian had both reached the realm of Sir God. Even though Green Fire World had an extremely conducive cultivating environment, these people would not have improved so greatly without time. How long have I been in slumber? Jian Wushuang muttered to himself. Soon, everyone within the palace were being served with good food and wine. They sat down and started chatting. Jian Wushuang finally knew how long he had been in a slumber. 24,000 years. Yes, after the great battle, he had fallen into a deep slumber. It had been 24,000 years since that great battle. To Jian Wushuang, this was a great amount of time. He had cultivated for less than 10,000 years since birth, unlike many almighty experts within the eternal chaotic who were at hundreds of thousands, or even millions of years old. Emperor Bai was an example of such an expert. He had been born in the First Era, and his age was beyond Jian Wushuang's wildest imagination. At the same time, Jian Wushuang got to know what everyone had done for him when he was in deep slumber. He knew the cost of building the Taiying Soul Resurrection Formation and the Spiritual Pool. On top of this, the cost of making ice soul elixirs. Big Boss Wang Yuan. Jian Wushuang looked at Wang Yuan gratefully and with excitement. Wang Yuan had had to make one ice soul elixir every 10 years for him for 24,000 years. Ice soul elixir was an extremely high-grade elixir. If it had been any other alchemist in the eternal chaotic world, they might only have been able to make one, even if they had sufficient resources, after hundreds of years. However, Wang Yuan had made 2,400 elixirs within this short amount of time. This was an enormous amount. Thank you. Jian Wushuang finally said these two words. Ha! You do not need to be so formal with me, brother, Wang Yuan answered casually. Their relationship went beyond life and death. They were brothers who went through thick and thin together. To Wang Yuan, it was nothing to spend some time on making some elixirs for Jian Wushuang. After a deep breath, Jian Wushuang started asking about what had changed in the Green Fire world. 24,000 years was a very long time. A lot had changed in the Green Fire world. There were now 26 Almighties, including Jian Nantian, who was an emperor god. There were numerous real gods and other geniuses. The Green Fire world really did grow. This is just the beginning. Given time, the number of experts within the Green Fire world will only increase, and it will be confirmed as one of the best places within the eternal chaotic world. Jian Wushuang felt that his hard work was worth it given how much the Green Fire world had grown and prospered. Wushuang, you should inform Emperor Bai and the rest of the great emperors that you have awakened. During the time that you were in slumber, they put in great effort to help you build the Taiying Resurrection Formation and the Spiritual Pool. Furthermore, it cost a fortune to keep these running, Jian Nantian said. Yes, I have already transmitted a message, Jian Wushuang smiled. He transmitted the message when he awakened. Emperor Bai and the rest would be on their way. Not just Emperor Bai, you should tell the experts from the special tribes. Furthermore, what is with the Black Dragon Emperor? Wang Yuan asked out of nowhere. Black Dragon Emperor? What's wrong? Jian Wushuang was curious. Don't act dumb. It is obvious that she is interested in you. When you were in your slumber, she would visit you once every now and then. She is the leader of her clan and has a lot of urgent matters to attend to, yet she visited you more than Emperor Bai and the other experts? Wang Yuan asked playfully. Hearing this, Jian Wushuang was stunned but helpless. He knew that Black Dragon Emperor was interested in him. However, he was already married. In this life, he would only love his wife and his wife alone. He would not accept anyone else. Looks like I have to speak to Black Dragon Emperor about this, Jian Wushuang muttered. Chapter 2202 Time for a Change. Emperor Bai, Abysmal Saint Master, Ancestor Tian Qin and many other experts from the Sanctuary Alliance reached after a while. King Chen Xen, King Luo Yu and the Black Dragon Emperor from the Special Tribes Alliance came along too. When everyone saw that Jian Wushuang had awakened, they were all surprised and elated. This was especially the case for the experts from the Special Tribes Alliance. Black Dragon Emperor was the happiest person of them all. When he saw that large number of visitors, Jian Wushuang held a banquet. At the banquet, Some of the most powerful experts in the eternal chaotic world gathered to celebrate and have fun. Some of them toasted Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang toasted back in response. At the banquet, Jian Wushuang, you slept for 24,000 years. During this time, the eternal chaotic world changed. Emperor Bai smiled. Oh! Jian Wushuang looked over at Emperor Bai. The star of this banquet was Jian Wushuang, while Emperor Bai was second to only him. He sat together beside Emperor Bai while the remaining people sat in front of them. During the previous battle, we suffered great casualties, many of which were pillars of support of their respective clans. The situation in the eternal chaotic world changed, though the changes are not of importance to you. Aside from the Sanctuary Alliance, the Green Fire World is the strongest power in the eternal chaotic world, and the second is the Lineage of Stars. Emperor Bai smiled. Jian Wushuang raised his eyebrows. Green Fire World was the strongest power? Lineage of Stars was second? He was the leader for both clans. Jian Wushuang rubbed his nose as he looked at Emperor Bai. He understood what Emperor Bai had implied. The more elite you are, the more likely it is that you will become a target in the eyes of others. It was good that the Green Fire World and the Lineage of Stars expanded and grew over time. However, there would be certain hidden risks. Now that the eternal chaotic world was not in the face of any threat, there would be internal fighting for resources. Within the Sanctuary Alliance, the great emperors would fight for their own power and standing. If Green Fire World and Lineage of Stars continuously remained so powerful, the other forces would fear them. This was especially the case for Green Fire World as its potential was limitless. Jian Wushuang thought to himself for a moment before he came to a decision. Hi everyone. Jian Wushuang stood up as his majestic voice was heard at every corner of the banquet. Everyone at the banquet turned and looked at him. Jian Wushuang continued, during the time I was in a deep sleep, there were many changes to the eternal chaotic world. Hence, the agreement between the Green Fire World and the rest of the eternal chaotic world should be amended as well. When the experts heard what Jian Wushuang had said, their faces turned pale. The agreement between Green Fire World and the rest of the eternal chaotic world. It was that no Almighty shall step foot onto the Green Fire World without permission. Clans could only send certain youngsters into the allocated area within the Green Fire World to cultivate. Once they reach the realm of real God, they have to leave. Many of the clans and tribes found it difficult to accept this agreement. Back then, Jian Wushuang had not been so powerful. However, he had in hand the strongest trump card that controlled the existence of Green Fire World and forced the other clans to sign the agreement. With Jian Wushuang's power, he could force all of the youngsters who were cultivating in the Green Fire World to leave, and there was nothing they would be able to do. Jian Wushuang looked at everyone and smiled. Everyone calm down. I will not ask your youngsters to leave the Green Fire World. On the contrary, I will allow all experts, including Sir Gods, Emperor Gods and Great Emperors to freely enter the Green Fire World. You can even stay there for as long as you like. What? Everyone was stunned, then they broke out in excitement. They were allowed into the Green Fire World? That was indisputably the best place for any cultivators to cultivate. The cultivation environment was many times better than the 10 sanctuaries. It was even better than Thunderbolt Island. Many of them had great desire to go there and cultivate. However, due to the agreement, they could only look at this sanctuary but not do anything. But Jian Wushuang had given them permission? Now that he had absolute power, he would not demand more, but even give concessions? Many of the experts were elated as they looked at Jian Wushuang gratefully. Jian Wushuang saw the reactions of these experts and smiled. If he wanted to, he could demand more from the eternal chaotic world by driving all other experts away. However, this would create resentment from the rest of the clans and cause them to have greater desire for the Green Fire World. They would not dare to do anything outrageous simply because he was around. However, if he were to leave one day, he would not be able to protect the Green Fire World anymore. The Green Fire World might be under assault. This could result in them losing their land, or worse, getting killed. Now that he had taken the initiative and taken a step back to give the rest of the eternal chaotic world something they always wanted, It would allow the rest of the experts to feel grateful and not be so extreme in their actions if they really invaded the Green Fire world. Second, this would allow Green Fire world to integrate with the eternal chaotic world and become the ultimate dream place for all cultivators. The best case would be that the people of Green Fire world and the rest of the eternal chaotic world would mix to produce offspring within the Green Fire world. If this was the case, people would treat the Green Fire world as though it was their own hometown. If the Green Fire world faced any danger or threats, there would be experts to step out voluntarily to face them. However, even though I allow the top-tiers experts into the Green Fire world, I hope all of you will abide by the law of the Green Fire world. If there is anyone who does evil or even goes on a massacre, then I am sorry. I will take care of you personally. Jian Wushuang's voice suddenly turned cold and he said, Chapter 2203 The Emperor Bai in the Pa. Don't worry, Sword Emperor. We will definitely abide by the laws of the Green Fire world. If anyone dares to be funny, I will take care of them myself. Abysmal Saint Master stood up and said, Don't worry, Sword Emperor. Whoever dares to play a fool within the eternal chaotic world will be our common enemy. The remaining experts and great emperors said. Seeing this, Jian Wushuang nodded his head in approval. Not bad. Emperor Bai looked over at Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang shrugged his shoulders. He wanted to do this for a very long time. Green Fire world was originally part of the eternal chaotic world, but it had been completely isolated for a period of time. Jian Wushuang really hoped that Green Fire world could completely integrate with the eternal chaotic world. However, it was a pity that the Green Fire world had had too much potential and he had not been powerful enough back then. If he had allowed the experts from the other clans to enter the Green Fire world back then, he would have completely lost control of the Green Fire world. Now it was different. He was powerful enough to control the Green Fire world and no one from the eternal chaotic world would try to do anything funny there. Even the great emperors within the Sanctuary Alliance had no choice but to listen to him, all except Emperor Bai. This was when he could give concessions to the rest. The banquet lasted 3 days and nights. The experts left after their hearts were full. Within Wushuang City, in a large garden, Jian Wushuang and Emperor Bai sat together at a table. Thank you, Emperor Bai, for all the things you did when I was in slumber, Jian Wushuang said gratefully. It is a small thing. You fell into slumber because you fought Blood Emperor for us. Since you gave your all for the eternal chaotic world, we too gave our all to take care of you. Furthermore, you don't have to talk to me so respectfully. We are about the same power level right now, Emperor Bai smiled. In terms of fighting power, Jian Wushuang would still lose to Emperor Bai. However, Jian Wushuang had a lot of trump cards, such as secret skills of Star Palace, which allowed him to have fighting power 1,000 times more than normal, which would be far above that of Emperor Bai. Hence, Emperor Bai would not ask Jian Wushuang to treat him as though he was superior. Alright, I will still call you Emperor Bai and neglect unnecessary etiquette, Jian Wushuang thought for a while before replying. Emperor Bai smiled as he whipped out a scroll. This scroll was the Mountain River map. This belongs to you. After you fell into slumber, I kept this treasure. Now that you awakened, I shall return it to its rightful owner, Emperor Bai said. Jian Wushuang's eyes lit up with happiness. He took the treasure and put it in his Qian Kuan ring. During that battle, Jian Wushuang casted the 7th seal of the 9-province seal and killed the Blood Emperor before he fell into deep slumber. He did not have enough time to keep the Mountain River map. Jian Wushuang, did you receive this treasure from Xianyi? Emperor Bai asked out of nowhere. Huh? Jian Wushuang raised his eyebrows as he looked at Emperor Bai in surprise. Xianyi was his master. He had appeared during the final battle. However, Jian Wushuang had never spoken his name, and Xianyi had not introduced himself at all. How did Emperor Bai know of this name? Emperor Bai, you know my master personally? Jian Wushuang asked. Your master? Of course I know him. Come, let me tell you a story. Once upon a time, back in the First Era, there was a little brat. He was the core disciple of his family. His family was very powerful and was the ruler of a territory. This little brat had a very high status within the family, hence he was a spoiled child. This little brat did everything he wanted to without giving it much thought. He would stir up trouble everywhere, but no one dared to stand up against him given how powerful his family was. This lasted until one day, this little brat provoked a clan that was much more powerful than his own family. Out of anger, that clan destroyed his entire family within 1 year and killed all of his loved ones. He was the only one that escaped. Hearing this, Jian Wushuang saw that Emperor Bai's eyes had started to tear up. Jian Wushuang understood immediately that that little brat was most likely Emperor Bai himself. I never thought that the most powerful man from the First Era was once a rich brat. Furthermore, his actions led to the annihilation of his entire family, Jian Wushuang thought to himself. There were many rich brats in this world. However, they were not born this way, to be evil. They were like this because of their upbringing, which caused them to do things without giving much thought. Once these kind of rich brats experienced great setbacks, they would either remain affected by the setback for the rest of their lives, or they would evolve into a better person. Emperor Bai was the latter. Even though the little brat managed to escape, he was extremely weak and powerless to do anything. There were assassins who were constantly after him. When he was desperate and was about to jump off a cliff, he met a mysterious man. This mysterious man managed to convince the little one not to jump. He was unwilling to resign himself to this fate. He felt anger, as this anger manifested into hatred. Under the effect of the words of the mysterious man, he wanted to take revenge. This mysterious man then gave him a cultivating technique called the heavenly creation skill. This teenage boy started to cultivate the technique and became very different from the remaining cultivators. His rate of growth was incredible and was unbeatable for the people in the same realm as him. He took one step at a time, from being a weakling to becoming the most powerful man in the First Era. He eventually destroyed his enemies and took revenge. Jian Wushuang's irises constricted. Heavenly creation skill, an inverse cultivation skill. This technique was given to him by a mysterious man. That mysterious man. Jian Wushuang stared at Emperor Bai. Like you should have guessed, that little brat was me when I was young. The mysterious man who gave me the cultivating technique was your master, Xian Yi. Emperor Bai said. Chapter 22 For the Secret to Inverse Cultivation. It's true. Jian Wushuang was right. That mysterious man was his master, Xian Yi. He had never thought that the inverse cultivating skill Emperor Bai had been given to him by Xian Yi. There were no inverse cultivators back in the ancient past. Emperor Bai is the first ever inverse cultivator in this world. That technique was given by my master. If that is the case, my master is the one who created the inverse cultivating skill? Jian Wushuang was in disbelief. Inverse cultivation? It was a brand new and unbelievable cultivating technique. Jian Wushuang was where he was due to this technique. As he got stronger, he slowly understood how powerful and terrifying this technique was. He had always wondered who had created such a powerful and magical cultivating technique. He knew that no matter who it was, it had to be someone incredible. Now, all the clues pointed to his master, Xian Yi. I have no idea whether this inverse cultivating technique was indeed created by your master. It might have been created by someone else and given to us through him. It does not matter. Your master is one of the most mysterious men I have ever met since the First Era, Emperor Bai continued. People like Emperor 13 are incredibly powerful. He can partially ignore the restrictions of heaven and earth with his own power to reach the half-step divine demon realm. However, he is far less mysterious than your master, Xian Yi. Back in the First Era, when I reached the 7th step of inverse cultivation, your master came to look for me. I asked him if he gave me the inverse cultivation technique, or if he wanted me to do anything for him. It was a pity that he did not give me a clear answer. He said that I did not meet his requirements and he did not have any special requests. All he asked of me was to pass any future inverse cultivators the technique for the 7th step if I ever were to meet one. That's all. Jian Wushuang frowned. Emperor Bai was the first inverse cultivator to reach the 7th step. However, he never knew what Xian Yi had wanted to do, or what he was really after. What were the requirements Xian Yi was talking about? After that, I have not seen your master at all. The first era collapsed and the second era started to prosper. Inverse cultivation started to gain popularity within the eternal chaotic world. However, only the first 5 steps were available to the general masses. Hence, these inverse cultivators could only reach the realm of universe God. Furthermore, there is the terrifying inverse cultivation test which every inverse cultivator had to go through. Many of them died, and the only one who passed was Wu Bei. Even though he passed the inverse cultivation test and got the cultivation technique for the 6th step, he reached the peak of real God. That was where he was stuck, Emperor Bai said coldly. Jian Wushuang nodded his head to show he understood what Emperor Bai had just said. Emperor Bai had just said that Xian Yi had told him to pass the 7th step of inverse cultivation to anyone who had great talent. Real God Wu Bei. Jian Wushuang knew him. He had passed the inverse cultivation test and managed to enter the 6th step. However, he was not very talented. Emperor Bai would not pass the 7th step to such an ordinary cultivator. The next inverse cultivator who had managed to rise up was Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang had passed the inverse cultivator test and proven himself to be one of the most talented cultivators in the eternal chaotic world. Here, Emperor Bai was not stingy and gave him the technique for the 7th step inverse cultivation. Jian Wushuang recalled the first time he had met Emperor Bai. Emperor Bai had been very intimate and peaceful. He did not act all high and mighty. Back then, Jian Wushuang had suspected this was because of Emperor 13. Now he thought about it, it might have been because of Emperor 13, but he was not the main reason. The real reason was because both of them were inverse cultivators. Understood. Jian Wushuang exclaimed to himself. Many of the doubts he had had were answered. However, he still had 2 burning questions. The first, whether inverse cultivation was created by his master Xian Yi and what was his purpose of doing so if he did so. The second, Xian Yi's true identity. Jian Wushuang knew from past experience that Xian Yi came from the ancient past and had been a very influential and powerful man back then. He might be the reason why 7-star Black Sect was in danger and the reason why many experts from the ancient past had fallen into deep slumber. What kind of identity and power did he have to create all this? Furthermore, Emperor 13 was from the 7-star Black Sect and was the leader of the 7 stars. If Xian Yi was the reason why the 7-star Black Sect had been annihilated, why was Emperor 13 helping him? To be honest, I envy you, Jian Wushuang, Emperor Bai said. Huh. Jian Wushuang looked at Emperor Bai, astonished. Mr. Xian Yi only passed me the inverse cultivating technique. He does not interact with me much. He took you in as a lineal disciple and gave you numerous treasures. He treats you no differently to the way you treat him, Emperor Bai muttered, envious. Emperor Bai thought that Jian Wushuang was someone who met the requirements and was the one who Xian Yi really needed. On the other hand, he did not meet the requirements, and hence did not qualify for such treasures. Jian Wushuang smiled. He had to admit that Xian Yi really did treat him very well, just how a master should. Emperor Bai, thank you for all this info. Jian Wushuang thanked him gratefully. After Emperor Bai said all those things, many of the doubts that Jian Wushuang had disappeared. Now he knew more about his master. Ha! You're welcome. I am looking forward to seeing what Xian Yi has in mind. Oh yes, this transmission token is for you. Emperor Bai laughed. Emperor Bai whipped out a token. This is? Jian Wushuang looked at the transmission token, confused. Emperor 13 asked me to pass this to you. He wants you to message him once you awaken, Emperor Bai said. Is that the case? Jian Wushuang said as he fell into deep thought. Chapter 2205 There can only be one Emperor Bai left soon after. Within the garden, Jian Wushuang held the transmission token in his hands. Emperor 13, it is time we have a good talk. Let's not rush into this. Let me handle my other things first, Jian Wushuang muttered to himself. Jian Wushuang left the garden. On an empty ground within the Wushuang city, many figures were waiting. Some were standing while others sat cross-legged. Most of them came from the ancient god clan. Jian Wushuang appeared in front of these people. Ancient God Emperor. Greetings, ancient God Emperor. The experts from the Special Tribes Alliance greeted Jian Wushuang with fanaticism. Many people were not convinced that Jian Wushuang was a competent leader initially. It could be because of his human bloodline. However, after the Great Battle, everyone within the Special Tribes Alliance and Sanctuary Alliance trusted him fully. This was especially the case for the Special Tribes Alliance. They only listened to someone very powerful. Jian Wushuang was definitely an incredibly powerful expert. Jian Wushuang looked at everyone and said, "I want to speak to Black Dragon Emperor personally. Can all of you please give us some space?" King Chen Xen, King Luo Yu and the rest were stunned. They looked at Jian Wushuang oddly before they walked off. Jian Wushuang and Black Dragon Emperor were left alone on the empty ground. Ancient God Emperor, Black Dragon Emperor smiled at Jian Wushuang. She was in black clothes and was stunning. Her crystal-clear skin was showing under her black clothes, which attracted the attention of many males. She also had an extremely cold aura. Without a doubt, she was extremely beautiful and attractive. Attractive to the point where even great emperors would fall for her. Black Dragon Emperor, I have heard that you visited me frequently during the time I was in slumber. I know of your feelings and I thank you for that. Jian Wushuang looked at Black Dragon Emperor and said. Black Dragon Emperor trembled slightly when she heard of this. Most people could have deduced that she had feelings for Jian Wushuang given how she had acted over the years. Black Dragon Emperor admired Jian Wushuang greatly. She believed that Jian Wushuang knew about it. However, Jian Wushuang did not speak about it at all. Now he was talking about it. Black Dragon Emperor took a deep breath and looked at Jian Wushuang fondly and in anticipation. Her admiration for him was very clear. She was waiting for his reply. Black Dragon Emperor, you should know that I already have a wife, Jian Wushuang said. Yes. But from what I heard, she left a long time ago, Black Dragon Emperor said. During the time Jian Wushuang had been in slumber, she had gone and inquired about everything related to Jian Wushuang, including the fact that Jian Wushuang had a wife. She only left but is not dead. I will find her sooner or later and bring her back, Jian Wushuang said firmly. I don't mind, Black Dragon Emperor smiled. Jian Wushuang knitted his eyebrows. He did not expect Black Dragon Emperor to be so persistent. He looked at Black Dragon Emperor in the eye and said, I will not love a second person in my life. Sorry. When the word sorry came out of Jian Wushuang's mouth, Black Dragon Emperor trembled and she turned pale. After a while, she looked up at Jian Wushuang. Her expression was not of pain or disappointment. She smiled at Jian Wushuang and said, I understand. Sorry for all the trouble, ancient God Emperor. I will not trouble you anymore after today. She bowed slightly to Jian Wushuang before leaving. She left very quickly, as though she was running away from Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang stood there, looking at the back view of the Black Dragon Emperor. Even though he did not want to do this, all he could do was to shake his head. There was no way a forced relationship would work. Jian Wushuang already had someone in his heart. Chapter 2206 Inside the Head inside Chilly Wind Valley, in the endless large dark hole. Chill wind was blowing everywhere. Jian Wushuang recalled that when he was here for the first time, he had almost died to the chill winds. Now, the chill wind posed no threat to him. In the air above Chilly Wind Valley stood a man in a white cloak. Lord Emperor 13. Jian Wushuang greeted as he bowed lightly. Emperor 13 looked at Jian Wushuang and said, Follow me. Emperor 13 dashed into the Chilly Wind Valley. Even though Jian Wushuang had many unanswered questions, he dashed in without hesitation. Jian Wushuang followed behind Emperor 13 as they traveled at terrifying speed. A while later, Jian Wushuang saw these gigantic, white jades. Have we reached the bottom of the Chilly Wind Valley? Jian Wushuang asked. This was where he met Emperor 13 for the first time. He had been surprised by Emperor 13 when they first met. Jian Wushuang was surprised when he saw Emperor 13 maintain his speed even as they approached these jades. Boom! The jades opened up and created a pathway for Emperor 13 to pass through. What? This is not the bottom of the valley? Jian Wushuang was astonished. He had initially thought that they had reached the bottom of the valley. This was not the case. He followed Emperor 13 deeper into the valley. The further they went, the more surprised Jian Wushuang became. Chilly Wind Valley is far too deep. Jian Wushuang muttered to himself. From the entrance of Chilly Wind Valley to where he was then, they had at least traveled tens of millions of kilometers, yet they were still not at the bottom of the valley? They were not close to the bottom either, as the way forward was still pitch black. Even though Jian Wushuang was surprised, he maintained his speed. Another 7 minutes or so passed. Finally, they reached the bottom of the valley. Is this where the bottom of the valley truly lies? Jian Wushuang scanned his surroundings. The ground was scarlet red, just like a human's flesh. There were clouds of bloody mist around him. The most obvious structure was another passageway at one side. Jian Wushuang squinted his eyes when he saw this passageway. The Chilly Wind Valley was not too far away from Green Fire World, and Green Fire World was located at the center of the forehead of a humongous head. The head was the most unbelievable thing Jian Wushuang had ever seen. Chilly Wind Valley was located right below the head. He followed Emperor 13 all the way down to the point that Jian Wushuang forgot how far he had traveled before he got here. He knew that he was inside the head. No matter if it was Green Fire World or the other unique sites of opportunity, they were located at the surface of the head. Now Jian Wushuang entered the inside of that head. What would he find inside the head? Jian Wushuang's mind was racing. The head was the most valuable and mysterious place compared to the rest of the ancient battlefield. When Jian Wushuang looked through the formation on this head, the cultivators from the Green Fire World did try to enter this head and explore the interior, but to no avail. The furthest they could go was about a few million kilometers, as the skin of this head was extremely tough. Today, he had reached the interior of the head. "Let's go," Emperor 13 said coldly as he walked into the passageway. Jian Wushuang thought to himself silently for a moment before following Emperor 13. The passageway was very big. The first noticeable things were the crimson walls at both sides. Jian Wushuang knew that he was inside a real head. He could not help and muttered to himself, "Are these walls really made out of flesh and blood?" He walked along the passageway for a short while. An open space appeared in Jian Wushuang's vision. On this open ground stood many crimson statues. When these statues saw Emperor 13 and Jian Wushuang walking over towards them, they turned alive as their crimson eyes opened. They were filled with killing intent as these eyes turned towards Jian Wushuang and Emperor 13. An extremely strong sense of danger rose in Jian Wushuang's heart when he saw these crimson eyes. He was startled. These statues, Jian Wushuang was sure that every single one of these statues was extremely powerful. Luckily, these statues did not attack and only looked at them once before closing their eyes. This could have been because of Emperor 13. Emperor 13 led the way forward as he walked past all of these statues. These statues should be the guardians of this passageway, Jian Wushuang thought to himself. In the ancient past, experts would have left special measures in their caves or sites of opportunities. Just like the expert from the ancient past, Wu Hun, he had left behind many Dao soldiers around him to stop the weaker cultivators from entering to startle him. In this passageway that Emperor 13 had brought Jian Wushuang through, they were within the humongous head. All the valuable secrets should be hidden here, hence, there should contain several measures along the way. Apart from the crimson statues, Jian Wushuang saw numerous special measures. There were many sophisticated formations, traps, and even more guards. When the guards deeper in the passageway opened its eyes, Jian Wushuang's head went blank. These guards must have unimaginable power. With these measures, it would be impossible for even great emperors to enter. They would most probably die. Even if the emperor entered, he might be able to survive due to his unique constitution, but he would never reach the deepest part of the passageway. The only reason Jian Wushuang could reach so far in was because of Emperor 13. At the end of the passageway was the core of the humongous head. Here was a vast, dark space. This dark space was limitless and endless. At the center of this dark space, a province floated peacefully. Chapter 2207 Ancient Display Whoosh. Emperor 13 and Jian Wushuang appeared on this floating land. Once he set foot on the land, Jian Wushuang looked up and saw a platform. This platform was extremely big. There were 99,999 steps leading up to the platform. At the end of the steps, at the top of the platform, stood a throne. There was a figure sitting on this throne. It was a bold man with sharp eyebrows. His eyes looked as though they were the sun and moon. He sat there, looking down at everything with dignity. It was as though everything in this world submitted to him, and he was the sole ruler of this world. He. Jian Wushuang stared at the bold man on top of the platform. That man looked familiar as his facial features were the same as the gigantic head. Without a doubt, this was the owner of that gigantic head. Suddenly, the man who sat on the throne looked down at Jian Wushuang. His eyes were moving slowly as though they were a galaxy. Under that stare, Jian Wushuang felt that the world lost its colors. The surrounding scene started to change quickly. He was looking at the highest point in this world. Here, it was as though he was standing beside heaven. Here he saw the same bold man. This man was unimaginably large. Is this how big he really is? Jian Wushuang was stunned. The size of the head was already gigantic. Green Fire World was at the center of the forehead, but its size was negligible compared to the rest of the head. If the head was already this big, then how big was his whole body? Jian Wushuang looked at the complete divine body of this bold man. He was amazed. At this moment, Jian Wushuang noticed that this place was surrounded by thunderous clouds as a unique aura gathered and started to suppress him. It tried to tear him apart and annihilate him. This aura was heaven's will. This bold man was making an enemy with heaven's will. Suddenly, the bold man looked up and his eyes burned with determination. I will fight the heavens, I will fight the earth. I will fight this world just to attain the ultimate doctrine. If the heavens were to stop me, I would tear them apart. If the earth were to stop me, I would split it apart. If everyone in this world were to stop me, I would kill everyone. His majestic words forced the surrounding heavens back a great distance. You could hear the angry roars and shoutings, but none dared to continue their suppression. Jian Wushuang was stunned. His head was dizzy at this unbelievable scene. The man's words were ringing in his ears. If the heavens were to stop me, I would tear them apart. If the earth were to stop me, I would split it apart. If everyone in this world were to stop me, I would kill everyone. How domineering was that? How much confidence did that man have? A single look forced back the heavens' will. In front of him, even heavens will had to give way. Jian Wushuang was still in shock as the scene changed. This time, it was the scene of a vast battlefield. The battle had long started on this battlefield. The entire sky was tinted crimson red. The heavens at the highest point of the battlefield had many cracks as water was leaking out from it. It was evident that there was a hole in the heavens. On the ground below, worlds started to crumble as infinite amounts of living things were annihilated and died instantly. Many super-powerful experts died in this battle. Many of their bodies turned into mountains or seas of blood. This was the ancient battlefield, and this was the ultimate battle that had caused the end of the ancient past era. The battle was nearing the end. Many of the experts who were battling it out crazily stopped. At the center of the battlefield stood a humongous, bold man. A spear pierced through his chest and heart. This spear contained an incredible corrosive power which continuously corroded his divine body. This injury should have been fatal. However, he stood tall even though there was a spear through his body. The heavens will continually suppressed him from above. He scanned his surroundings. Everything within his vision subsided. Aside from the suppression from heaven's will, trillions of experts in the divine demon realm and countless experts stood there, staring at him with great killing intent. There were 3 people at the front. The first man was a bald man in white cloak. He was constantly smiling and was barefooted. He stood there in the sunlight as white light flashed off his skin. He gave off a peaceful and holy vibe. The second person was a woman in a crimson cloak. She had an extremely cold vibe and felt like no one could compare to her. She was just standing there, but many of the experts in the divine demon realm wanted to bow down to her. The last man was a demon king of his era. He wore purple armor and had a very big body. He held a crimson spear and was standing on top of his crimson dragon. He radiated a demonic aura. These three experts fixed their gazes on the bold man with great killing intent. They were ready to deliver the killing blow. Right then, the bold man said majestically, "I lived my life proudly. How can I die at the hands of mere mortals like you? Die along with me." As soon as he finished speaking, his incredibly gigantic divine body started to crumble, starting from his limbs. Only his head was left. Then, a terrifying power swept forth in all directions. The entire ancient battlefield threatened to crumble. Heavens will dissipated and heaven cracked into pieces. The entire earth shattered. It was an apocalypse. How much you can understand depends on you. Emperor 13 said as he started to form seals with his hands and placing them onto the monument. Instantly, the monument, which was 10,000 feet tall, radiated a special aura. At the same time, a gray air current appeared. The gray air current seemed extremely mysterious. Anyone who recognized it would be in disbelief. This air current was rare even in the ancient past. It was the air of chaos. Air of chaos was one of the things that the experts from the ancient past sought after crazily. The air that gushed out of the monument was the air of chaos. Hum, hum, hum. The air of chaos started to drift towards Jian Wushuang as it completely surrounded him like a cocoon. This is... Jian Wushuang widened his eyes in surprise as he stared at the air that was surrounding him. Even though he could not recognize the air, he could feel how pure and concentrated the energy which was contained in the air was. Never had he seen any energy so pure. Without hesitation, he started channeling the heavenly creation skill. As this skill continued to be channeled, all the air of chaos was absorbed through his pores and was converted into his own divine power. My divine power is improving at such a fast rate. Jian Wushuang clenched his fist in excitement. He could feel that he was getting stronger at an extremely fast rate. This speed was not achievable with just self-meditation or any random treasure. The rate of improvement was not so great back when Jian Wushuang was meditating beside the Supreme Emperor Stone. However, this gray airflow was not the truly valuable opportunity. Jian Wushuang looked up and stared at the 10,000 feet tall heaven-suppressing monument. Originally, this monument had no inscriptions at all. Slowly, ancient inscriptions started to appear at the top of the monument. It was gold in color, in a language Jian Wushuang had never seen before. This was completely different from any language there was in the eternal chaotic world. These words were not a unique language from the ancient past. There were many ancient past battlefields left behind in the eternal chaotic world, many of which contained certain ancient languages. These ancient languages had some resemblance to the modern languages the people of the eternal chaotic world use. Jian Wushuang would recognize them if he saw it. However, Jian Wushuang could not recognize these words at all. Chapter 2209 Breakthrough. What are these words? Jian Wushuang was staring intently at the words that appeared at the top of the monument. These words appeared slowly as one stroke appeared at a time. Jian Wushuang was infatuated with these inscriptions. In his eyes, these were not words. They were a whole world. He saw a whole new world within these words. Within that world, there was chaos and no elements at all. However, evolution started to happen as the chaos slowly evolved into mountains, rivers, and the earth. These would eventually make a new world. They were the foundation of that world. Only after the world was made then life would appear within this world. In the dark space, Jian Wushuang stood on the floating province. His divine body was surrounded by the air of chaos as it gushed into his body steadily. The 10,000-foot tall heaven-suppressing monument floated in front of him. On the heaven-suppressing monument, ancient words colored in gold appeared slowly and sequentially. The number of words started to increase slowly. Even though these were words inscribed into the monument, what Jian Wushuang saw was the evolution of a whole new world. He was infatuated with this process and was immersed in it. Emperor 13 sat cross-legged beside him before closing his eyes. Time started to pass. The number of inscriptions on the monument started to increase as time passed. Every hour or so, a new word would appear on the monument. This monument was 10,000 feet tall. Hence, tens of thousands of ancient words were nothing as compared to its huge size, much less one of these words. Millions of such inscriptions could fit onto the heaven-suppressing monument. Time passed quickly. After a very long time, the golden inscriptions finally covered every corner of the heaven-suppressing monument. The heaven-suppressing monument had no more room to fit any more inscriptions into. Soon, the last inscription was done. Jian Wushuang, who was immersed in the evolution of that world, heard a boom within his heart before the world he was immersed in finally crumbled as his consciousness returned to the real world. He looked at the heaven-suppressing monument once again and was in disbelief when he saw the countless number of golden inscriptions. Unbelievable! This heaven-suppressing monument is definitely made by an unbelievable technique, Jian Wushuang thought as he clenched his fists. Without a doubt, the heaven-suppressing monument was a precious treasure. Even the mountain river map could not compare. Within the heaven-suppressing monument, he saw the evolution of a whole new world. From the beginning of the world, when everything was complete chaos, to finally when life was born. Jian Wushuang had seen the entire process as he meditated at the heaven-suppressing monument. How incredible was that? It was a pity that Jian Wushuang had only seen up to the point the first life had come about and the scene had ended. This might have been because there was only one heaven-suppressing monument. He guessed that he needed to gather all 9 heaven-suppressing monuments before he could finally see the entire process. Sigh. He exhaled lightly before he looked around. He saw Emperor 13 opening his eyes, looking at him. "You are awake?" Emperor 13 spoke, cold as ever. "Yes." "Emperor 13, how long have I been here, meditating?" 1,081 years, Emperor 13 said. "What?" Jian Wushuang was shocked. It was not because he felt that 1,081 years was long. He had lived for tens of thousands of years. He had been in slumber for 24,000 years. 1,000 years was nothing compared to that. The reason why he was shocked was because he felt that time had barely passed after he had started meditation to the evolution of the world. He thought he would take a very short while, maybe around half a day. However, 1,081 years had passed? So much time has passed? Jian Wushuang exclaimed. He finally understood how the experts from the eternal chaotic world could meditate tens of thousands of years at one go. When an expert at that level used all his heart to meditate, he would not feel time had passed even though tens of thousands of years had gone. You should check out what changed within you. You should have benefited greatly during these 1,000 years, Emperor 13 said. Jian Wushuang was stunned before he checked his own body out. He first looked at his divine power. During the time he had been meditating, the gray airflow had been absorbed by him continuously and turned into divine power. His divine power should have improved greatly. Once he checked that out, he was pleasantly surprised. I broke through? Jian Wushuang widened his eyes in surprise as elation was written all over his face. With Jian Wushuang's fighting power and attitude, any normal improvement would not have resulted in such a big expression of emotion. But no, he could not help it, his improvement was too great. The divine power within his body was near to 10 times the original. His divine power was already almost limitless and could allow him to reform his body a couple of times. Now that amount of divine power had increased by 10 times? It was not just the amount of divine power, but also the quality of it. His divine power had just evolved. Jian Wushuang had been dreaming of this for a very long time. This evolution was not through any secret skills or techniques. He needed to acquire it through a breakthrough. The evolution would only occur when he broke through from the second phase of inverse cultivation to the third phase. Jian Wushuang had broken through. During the 1,081 years, he had continuously absorbed the air of chaos into his body to turn into divine power. His divine power had increased at an insane rate. Furthermore, one only needed more divine power to break through from the second phase to the third phase. While he was meditating, his divine power had met the required standard and he had broken through. Now, he was in the third phase of the seventh step inverse cultivation. This was the ultimate phase. Chapter 22:10 Sword Doctrine Trial Tower, Ultimate phase of seventh step inverse cultivation. Jian Wushuang clenched his fist, excited. Even though it was a mere one-phase difference between the second phase and the ultimate phase, the difference in power was glaring. Based on the amount of divine power it was as though there was an ocean of divine power within Jian Wushuang. With such a vast amount of divine power, it would be extremely difficult to kill him, as he too had the perfect chaotic holy body. His divine power and divine body were 10 times as powerful as before. His combat power erupted. With his current power, he could easily kill great emperors using strength alone. The ultimate phase of the seventh step inverse cultivation gave one power far greater than what a great emperor could possess. The power was equivalent to that of an expert in the realm of divine demon. Emperor Bai reached the ultimate phase of the seventh step inverse cultivation and was the strongest in this world. However, Emperor Bai was strong not only because of this, but because he managed to grasp a little of the rules of order. Rules of order, Jian Wushuang muttered to himself as he opened his palms slowly. Both palms were outstretched as he channeled 2 unique energies at the center of his palm. These 2 energies evolved from the power of spacetime and the reincarnation power. However, a glint of excitement flashed across his eyes when Jian Wushuang looked at these 2 types of energies. Rules of order, this is the rules of order. Rules of order. Jian Wushuang roared with laughter. That's right. The 2 types of energies in his palm were the space-time rule of order and reincarnation rules of order. He now had control over both powers. During the 1081 days, he had been completely immersed in the evolution of heaven and earth. Before heaven and earth could evolve, the rules of order had to come about first. The rules of heaven and earth was the highest form of power in this world. The Supreme Four Doctrine and the 9 Heaven God Doctrine would evolve and eventually form rules of order. The rules of heaven and earth would branch off into the Supreme Four Doctrine and 9 Heaven God Doctrine to form everything there was in the world. Jian Wushuang had seen the evolution clearly during the 1081 years he had meditated. Not only did he see, but he also felt and understood the evolution process. After he understood the process, he tried it himself and managed to master the space-time rule of order and the reincarnation rules of order. Jian Wushuang had finally grasped the rules of order. And he grasped 2 different types of rules or order. Even though his understanding was minimal, he had still managed to grasp it, which had helped him evolve to become stronger. I am in the same realm as Emperor Bai. Both of us are in the ultimate phase of the 7th step inverse cultivation, and both of us have a grasp of the rules of order. However, I have grasped 2 rules of order and have the complete ancient god bloodline power. If I combine the power of them all, Jian Wushuang smiled. Jian Wushuang had the lead based on raw power and understanding of rules of order. As for the secret skills, Emperor Bai cultivated the 9-star armor from the 7-star black sect and was at the golden armor scripture. This secret skill was very powerful. Furthermore, he had cultivated another very powerful secret skill. It was a pity that he did not have the complete version of the secret skill, hence he could not use the skill to its fullest potential. After the Great War, Emperor 13 had handed him the complete version of the secret skill. Now, he could maximize the power of the secret skill. It had been 24,000 years since the Great War was over, and Emperor 13 handed Emperor Bai the complete version of the secret skill. Emperor Bai should have successfully cultivated this skill to become even stronger. Hence, Emperor Bai had mastered several incredible secret skills and techniques. Jian Wushuang was not too shabby either. He had the top-tier secret skill from the ancient god clan, the immemorial celestial body. He had cultivated the 2nd scripture, which would boost his fighting power greatly. As for the other secret skill, moon-picking skill, it too was extremely powerful. As for secret skills of Star Palace, that was one of the trump cards Jian Wushuang had and that could enable him to destroy all foes. As for treasures, he had the Mountain River Map and the Soul-Swallowing Pearl, 2 high-grade treasures. The Mountain River Map could suppress everything. On the other hand, the soul-swallowing pearl could be used with his soul attack to create an extremely powerful attack which could threaten even Emperor Bai. The overall battle power of Jian Wushuang would not be weaker than Emperor Bai's. To really differentiate who was more powerful, they needed to have a battle. If I have the chance in the future, I really want to spar with Emperor Bai, Jian Wushuang smiled eerily. Jian Wushuang had benefited greatly from the 1,080 years he spent meditating. Right then, Emperor 13 stood up. He held out his right hand, which contained an ancient, black tower. Emperor 13 tossed this tower in front of him. This tower enlarged and soon, it turned into a large tower in front of Jian Wushuang. Emperor 13, this is? Jian Wushuang looked at the black tower, puzzled. This tower radiated an ancient and majestic aura. Without a doubt, this tower was an incredible treasure. This is the Sword Doctrine Trial Tower. I made this personally a long time ago. However, I am not gifted as a blacksmith, hence it was just an ordinary treasure back in the past. You should be able to benefit from it greatly now if you try to venture inside, Emperor 13 said. Sword Doctrine Trial Tower? Is it a trail tower targeting one's understanding of the sword doctrine? Jian Wushuang asked as he squinted his eyes. The restrictions in this world are far too powerful. I can only guarantee you 1,000 years inside. Treasure the time you have inside, Emperor 13 said and explained no further. Jian Wushuang was tempted. He knew this black tower was extraordinary. Furthermore, this tower had been made by Emperor 13 personally to target the sword doctrine, which should benefit him greatly. Jian Wushuang stopped hesitating as he dashed inside the tower. After he entered the tower, he realized he was in the middle of a vast, dark space. It seemed like there was no end to the space. It was big enough for battles to occur in. My strength and bloodline power are restricted? I cannot use them freely? Jian Wushuang muttered to himself as he squinted his eyes. He realized that his divine power was being suppressed to the level of an ordinary expert in the divine demon realm. At the same time, he realized he could not use his bloodline power at all. Chapter 22:11 Amateur. Within the vast dark space, figures started to form in front of Jian Wushuang. A young man who had a devilish look appeared. He held a long sword as he stared at Jian Wushuang with his emotionless eyes. This young man attacked. He appeared in front of Jian Wushuang and slashed with his long sword. This slash looked normal and it contained no sword skill. However, this ordinary slash was extremely fast with the power of a divine demon and some rules of order. Is he my opponent? Jian Wushuang stared at the devilish young man and smiled lightly. I also managed to master rules or order but am not familiar with it yet. I should take this chance to familiarize myself with this new power. Jian Wushuang attacked as he slashed his blood mountain sword. This slash contained the power of a divine demon and the space-time rules of order. Clang. Both long swords collided with equal power. The moment the swords collided, the devilish young man flicked his sword up in a weird manner as the sword was headed for his wrist. Jian Wushuang was caught by surprise as he quickly drew back his sword in response. Right then, the devilish young man used a little strength and the sword was headed for Jian Wushuang's throat at lightning speed. What? Jian Wushuang turned pale. At first, he knew that the devilish young man was not a simple opponent as his sword skills were simple and smooth. However, after they started sparring, he realized all these simple moves flowed extremely smoothly. He was perfect. Jian Wushuang was suppressed by the simple sword skill. A slash, a flick, a stab, a jab. Jian Wushuang finally turned serious. A unique sword essence radiated out from him. It was as though he had turned into a large, dark vortex. Sword Principle Xian Luo. Mixed Element Spirit. Clang, 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 clang. Collisions between the metallic blades could be heard clearly. Jian Wushuang had already used the sword skill, Mixed Element Spirit, to its full potential, while his opponent simply used ordinary attacks. Within the eternal chaotic world, any cultivators who cultivated the sword doctrine could cast these attacks easily. However, Jian Wushuang was completely suppressed by these simple attacks. The mixed element spirit he was casting was wonderfully refined. However, even this sword skill could barely fend off those simple attacks. Jian Wushuang could only retreat slowly. His sword skills were completely suppressed, and he could not even use them to their full potential. Suddenly, clang! After a flurry of attacks, the sword that the devilish man held slashed across Jian Wushuang's wrist as the wrist was sliced off, together with the blood mountain sword. The devilish young man then stopped his attacks. Jian Wushuang stood there in the dark space in disbelief. He looked at the wound on his right hand before regenerating the hand immediately after channeling his divine power. He was overcome by waves of shock and disbelief. How can this be? How can such simple attacks suppress me? I was completely suppressed and not able to fight back at all. Are those really just simple attacks? Jian Wushuang was shaken to the core. His understanding of the sword doctrine was already extremely high. This was the case in the eternal chaotic world. He was the most powerful sword cultivator. The other almighties who excelled in sword doctrines were no match for him. Jian Wushuang too thought that his understanding of the sword doctrine was extremely deep. Back in the Blood Emperor sanctuary grounds, he had been unable to suppress the Blood Emperor even though he had the superior power advantage. He then realized his experience in battle was nothing compared to that of the experts from the ancient past. He had to admit that even though there were incredible sword skills in this era, it was nothing compared to those from the ancient past. He had never thought that he would lose to someone who had equal power to him and only used the basic attacks. And he was completely suppressed. His sword skills were like those of a kid compared to those of the devilish young man. It was laughable. Right then, Jian Wushuang, your sword skills and understanding of the sword doctrine might be top tier in the first era. However, back in the ancient past, your understanding of the sword doctrine would be far too weak. You were not even qualified to be called a sword doctrine cultivator. You are an amateur. Emperor 13's voice appeared in the dark space. Amateur? Jian Wushuang was stunned. If the experts from the eternal chaotic world heard that their sword emperor was being called an amateur, there would be a great commotion. One of the strongest men in the eternal chaotic world, the man who was famous for his sword skills, Jian Wushuang. But in the eyes of Emperor 13, he was just an amateur? Everyone would usually look down on the person who said that, but Emperor 13 was the one who said it. Those who saw the battle between Emperor 13 and Blood Emperor, including Jian Wushuang, could not refute this. You are an amateur. You don't even know what sword doctrine truly is. You do not need too much style, nor too much power. A person who does not know much about sword doctrine can only unleash 10% of an extremely powerful sword skill, but a person who understands what sword doctrine truly is can unleash incredible power with just a simple skill. In your case, you are the former, Emperor 13 said. Hearing this, Jian Wushuang laughed bitterly. I never thought that my understanding of the sword doctrine was so laughable. This is not to blame you. In this era, the most powerful expert is only in the peak chaotic realm. Rules of order is far too high level for most of you as all of you live under the restrictions in this world. It is far too difficult to experience what sword doctrine truly is, Emperor 13 continued. It was true. Jian Wushuang was the strongest sword user in this era. The experts in this era were far too weak. If they had been born in the ancient past, the sword doctrine Jian Wushuang would see or experience would be far more than in the eternal chaotic world. Chapter 22:12 Sword Doctrine. The Sword Doctrine Trial Tower can allow you to experience the higher form of sword doctrine. Just like your first opponent, he is considered a beginner in sword doctrine. If you can defeat him with your sword skills alone, you will be considered a beginner as well, Emperor 13 said. He is considered a beginner? Jian Wushuang looked at the devilish young man fiercely. He waved his hand as the Blood Mountain sword flew back into his hand. Let's go. Without hesitation, Jian Wushuang attacked once again. He battled the young man fiercely with all the sword skills he knew. Before long, he had lost again. Again! Jian Wushuang was not discouraged and he attacked again. He was completely immersed in his battle against the young man with a devilish look. Even though there was a large gap between the understanding of sword doctrine between the two, Jian Wushuang realized he had begun to understand more about the sword doctrine after multiple sparring sessions. Sword skill can be cast in this manner? Coherence, smooth. A simple sword skill can be more powerful as compared to some top-tier ones. Sword, it can be used like this? Jian Wushuang was a fast learner. He lost countless times against the devilish young man. He would always learn something from each and every defeat, whether it was from his battle techniques or from his sword skills. Or he would figure out certain techniques the young man would use in his sword skills and learn from it. Even though he was being suppressed in every manner, he was constantly learning from his opponent and slowly becoming a stronger cultivator. After 3 years, Jian Wushuang still lost to the devilish young man, but was no longer suppressed. 5 years later, the devilish young man could only suppress Jian Wushuang in the form of sword skills. Even though Jian Wushuang's defeat was inevitable, it would take longer before he was actually defeated. 17 years later, Jian Wushuang could fight the devilish young man evenly head-on. 32 years later, clang, sparks were created as the long swords collided against each other. Jian Wushuang charged forward as the long sword in his hand turned into lightning and stabbed towards his opponent. The speed was too fast to be described with words. Clang. The tip of the blade collided with the body of the devilish young man. The blade did not pierce his body, but the impact caused him to lose balance and stumble a few steps backwards. After he steadied himself, the devilish young man looked at Jian Wushuang. This time he did not attack. At the same time, his body started to evaporate. Looks like I finally defeated him. A hint of joy was seen in Jian Wushuang's eyes as he saw the body of the devilish young man start to evaporate. Up till today, he had been inside the Sword Doctrine Trial Tower for 32 years. During this time, he had been constantly battling the devilish young man. They had fought over tens of thousands of times. Initially, he had been completely suppressed. After all these years of hard work, Jian Wushuang had finally defeated the devilish young man. There had been great improvements in Jian Wushuang's sword skills, and his understanding of the sword doctrine was a level higher compared to before. The reason why I can defeat him is not just because I have a better understanding of the sword doctrine. I have with me sword principle Xian Luo, which was one of the most powerful sword principles back in the ancient past. This helped me out greatly during our battles. If I were to use the most simple sword skills, I would need some more time before I could defeat him with the simple skills, Jian Wushuang muttered to himself. However, he could still go even against the devilish young man if he only used the most simple sword skills. According to Emperor 13, he should be a beginner in sword doctrine. From an amateur to a beginner, Jian Wushuang exclaimed. In the space in front of him, another figure started to form slowly. This time, his opponent was a graceful lady in white cloak. She had a cold gaze. This was his second opponent in the Sword Doctrine Trial Tower. Her sword skills were much stronger compared to the devilish young man's. Soon, the lady in white cloak attacked. Jian Wushuang fought back, but was defeated easily. On the floating piece of land, the ancient, black Sword Doctrine Trial Tower stood tall. Emperor 13 sat down cross-legged again. He looked at the tower as his vision turned cloudy. Sword Doctrine. There is no end to the sword doctrine. Even though I reached the peak of the sword doctrine, I still feel that my understanding is not complete. What exactly is the perfect sword doctrine? Emperor 13 muttered to himself before closing his eyes slowly. He had reached the peak of the sword doctrine. Even during the prime time during the ancient past, few could have reached the level he had. There was almost no one who was stronger than him in the aspect of sword doctrine. Even so, he was still trying to chase after a better or higher form of sword doctrine. There was no limit to the doctrine. This was also the case for sword doctrine. Jian Wushuang, who was in the Sword Doctrine Trial Tower, was immersed in the battles he had with countless number of opponents. He was learning from his imperfections during these battles. Time continued to pass. 1,000 years flashed by in the blink of an eye. The Sword Doctrine Trial Tower still stood tall in the vast, dark space. Two figures were engaged in a heated battle. Jian Wushuang held his sword single-handedly. He did not use the secret skill of the ancient god clan to have 9 heads and 18 arms. To him now, having 18 arms and swords had no difference compared to holding one single sword on one hand. Having too many hands became a burden. He moved his sword around casually. Could be a thrust or a slash or a flick. Each move was smooth and decisive. He moved around elegantly and gracefully as he cast his sword skills. His vision was sharp and focused. His opponent was an elder with red hair. The sword skills of this elder were extremely fast and violent. Jian Wushuang was extremely calm in this battle. During the heated exchange, he was trying his best to find his opponent's weakness. After a while, the red-haired man slashed his sword. Jian Wushuang's eyes lit up when he saw this move. He swung the sword in his hands as it thrust out in an eerie manner. Sword Principal Xian Luo. Sanguis Extremis Style. PFFD. A bloody mist erupted from the elder man's chest as he backed off. This is the 16th one, Jian Wushuang smiled. Chapter 2213 Fighting Power Skyrocketed. Jian Wushuang spent 1,000 years inside the Sword Doctrine Trial Tower sparring against other experts. Jian Wushuang had lost count of how many battles he had fought. However, he knew his sword skills were improving at a tremendous rate. No other opportunities could help him improve at such a great rate. This was because he was fighting against an expert of a completely new level. It was as though these experts had opened a new door to sword doctrine. There had been a leap in his sword skills and his understanding of sword doctrine compared to before. Jian Wushuang felt that he could kill his old self with one simple slash. That was how much he had improved. In the dark space, a space tunnel appeared in front of Jian Wushuang. Looks like I took exactly 1,000 years to defeat 16 opponents. Jian Wushuang smiled as he followed this space tunnel out of the Sword Doctrine Trial Tower. Emperor 13, Jian Wushuang greeted as he bowed slightly. With the great improvement in his understanding of the Sword Doctrine, Jian Wushuang felt completely different when he looked at Emperor 13 once again. Back then, he had not had a clue how powerful Emperor 13 was. He only knew he was extremely powerful. Now, he felt that Emperor 13 himself was a unique divine sword. The sword essence that he radiated made Jian Wushuang's heart throb. Even though my understanding of the sword doctrine has improved greatly, I am nothing compared to Emperor 13, Jian Wushuang muttered to himself. He knew where he stood. He knew he still needed a lot of practice as his sword skills now were still not good enough for him to go against the Blood Emperor. When Emperor 13 fought Blood Emperor, he was under the restrictions of heaven and earth. He could only use a small portion of his sword skills. However, this little portion of his sword skills was already far superior to what Jian Wushuang had right now. How incredible were his sword skills when Emperor 13 was in his prime. Jian Wushuang could not imagine that. How many opponents did you defeat during the 1,000 years you were inside? Emperor 13 asked. While Jian Wushuang had been sparring opponents within the Sword Doctrine Trial Tower, Emperor 13 had been meditating and did not take note of what happened within the tower. I defeated 16, Jian Wushuang said. 16? Emperor 13 nodded his head in approval. He expected that Jian Wushuang could defeat around 13 or 14 opponents. Jian Wushuang had gone beyond his expectations and defeated 16. The opponents within the Trail Tower would become increasingly stronger, and it would be increasingly more difficult to defeat them. From the moment you defeat the first opponent, you are considered an amateur in the sword doctrine. If you can defeat the opponents, you will have reached the initial success. When you defeat 20, you will have reached the profound realm. You still have a lot to work on before you reach profound realm as you have only managed to defeat 16 opponents, Emperor 13 said. I've only reached initial success? Jian Wushuang raised his eyebrows. He had thought that the improvement he had over the 1,000 years was incredible enough. He had not expected that he had only reached initial success in his understanding of the sword doctrine. You will only reach the profound realm after defeating 20 opponents. What if you defeat 30, 50, or even 100 opponents? Jian Wushuang asked. You are still in the profound realm after defeating 30 opponents. You will only reach complete satisfactory for the sword doctrine after defeating 50 opponents. As for 100 opponents, you have exceeded the complete satisfactory for the sword doctrine and finally reached the sword doctrine realm. You can then be called an expert in sword doctrine, Emperor 13 said. Sword doctrine realm? Jian Wushuang frowned. From what Emperor 13 had said, there were realms that differentiated people of different levels of mastery of the sword doctrine. Jian Wushuang still had a lot of room to improve before he could reach the profound realm. Even if someone surpassed being complete satisfactory for sword doctrine and reached the sword doctrine realm, they would be considered an expert in sword doctrine, but not a top-tier one. Sword doctrine is really broad and profound. Jian Wushuang exclaimed. Of course, as for you now, you need to continuously accumulate experience to elevate your mastery of sword doctrine. Even the sword doctrine realm is a far-fetched concept for you in this era. However, initial success in sword doctrine is already enough for you to completely dominate everyone in this era, Emperor 13 said. Jian Wushuang's eyes lit up in excitement. Jian Wushuang's mastery of sword doctrine was much better than it had been before. Aside from the experts from the ancient past, there would be no one within the eternal chaotic world with a greater understanding of sword doctrine. With his sword skill, the amount of divine power he had from the ultimate phase of the 7th step inverse cultivation and his understanding of rules of order, his fighting power was far greater than what it had been. He was so much more powerful that he himself had no idea how strong he actually was. However, he knew for sure that he could definitely beat Emperor Bai in a bat. Lord Emperor 13, thank you. Jian Wushuang thanked him gratefully. Both the Heaven-Suppressing Monument or the Sword Doctrine Trial Tower had helped him greatly as his fighting power had skyrocketed. Both of these treasures belonged to Emperor 13. Both of these opportunities were given to him by Emperor 13. Furthermore, Emperor 13 had helped him twice before, and hence Jian Wushuang was extremely grateful. I have already given you your opportunities, you can leave now, Emperor 13 said coldly and indifferently. Jian Wushuang felt odd. It was true that Emperor 13 had given him opportunities and treasures to help him improve. However, why had he done this? Why did he give such amazing opportunities? What was he trying to achieve? Emperor 13 did not mention this at all. Just like he had said, he would not tell Jian Wushuang anything at all. When the time was right, Jian Wushuang would know everything. Jian Wushuang frowned slightly. Before he had visited Emperor 13, he had many questions that he had wanted to ask and hoped for an answer from Emperor 13. Now, the number of questions he had only increased after what he had encountered within the head, seeing the bold man from the ancient display. However, he did not ask after seeing how cold Emperor 13 was towards him. Goodbye. Jian Wushuang bowed before leaving the way he came. Emperor 13 fell silent as he looked at Jian Wushuang as he slowly disappeared from his sight. He looked up at the bold man sitting there with a glint of uncertainty. There isn't much time left. I tried my best to help the little one. Now, it's up to him alone to reach your benchmark. Old man, I hope everything that you are trying to do is worth it. I hope this little man can achieve it. If not, my 7-star black sect, Emperor 13 clenched his fists tightly and said no more. Chapter 22:14 The Changes in the Lineage of Stars. Jian Wushuang returned the way he came. The various defensive mechanisms were not activated. Soon, Jian Wushuang was out of Chill Wind Valley. Sigh. Jian Wushuang heaved a deep sigh after he was back on the surface. He looked back at Chill Wind Valley as he was still in shock after what he had seen. He knew that the owner of the head, the bold man, definitely had many incredible secrets. It was a pity that he was too weak to even have the right to know these secrets. During the 2,000 years that Jian Wushuang had been in the gigantic head, his overall fighting power had reached a completely new level and he was very pleased with it. Time to return, Jian Wushuang muttered. He flipped out a transmission token. Hall Master Yuan just transmitted a message. Hall Master Yuan, what's the matter? Jian Wushuang asked. It's nothing major. However, if you are free, You should go back and visit the lineage of stars, Hall Master Yuan said. Roger, Jian Wushuang nodded his head. He then returned to the Green Fire world. After Jian Wushuang moved the headquarters of the lineage of stars, it had been growing at an incredible rate given the excellent cultivating environment Green Fire world had. Lineage of stars had become even stronger and more powerful, even after many top-tier experts had been dying during the battle against the Three Emperors world. 30% of the territory within the Green Fire world was occupied by the different clans from the eternal chaotic world. Because of Jian Wushuang, lineage of stars had managed to secure a bigger territory compared to the other clans. A brilliant galaxy hovered in the air. The galaxy had completely recovered due to the abundance in spiritual influence of heaven and earth. The galaxy was even more brilliant and vast than it had been before. The power of the formation was even more powerful as well. Using special techniques, it could help out the disciples of the lineage of stars greatly. Jian Wushuang appeared within the brilliant galaxy. It has been a long time since I was here at the lineage of stars. Jian Wushuang raised his eyebrows. He usually remained within Wushuang City. He left the matters within the lineage of stars to Hall Master Yuan. After the great battle, he had been in slumber for 24,000 years, before he had gone to Chill Wind Valley. As Palace Master, Jian Wushuang had not come back to the lineage of stars for a very long time. The changes within the lineage of stars after all these years were huge. He could feel the difference when he stepped into the vast galaxy. The galaxy is completely different. The number of meta-beasts born from the galaxy is far more than before. They also have a much greater effect on cultivators. Jian Wushuang smiled as his soul power spread out and covered the entire galaxy. He could sense that there were many meta-beasts within the galaxy and they were very beneficial for the disciples when they cultivated. As of now, there were several disciples trying to capture the meta-beasts. Jian Wushuang smiled as he walked towards the interior of the galaxy. Soon, he appeared within the headquarters of Lineage of Stars. After he had returned to the headquarters, he realized there were far more experts and disciples than there had been before. Both the numbers and quality of experts had increased greatly. Within the Lineage of Stars, the disciples were separated into 3 levels. Everyone started as a normal disciple before they were promoted to core disciple. Finally, they would be promoted to disciples of Star Palace. The number of disciples of Star Palace had increased as well. There were 10 disciples of Star Palace for each level in the realm of Universe God. Every one of them was a top-tier geniuses. For Phase 3 Universe God, every single disciple of Star Palace was enlightened to the power of Heaven Way. While Jian Wushuang was still a disciple of Star Palace, it would be difficult to find other disciples of Star Palace who were also enlightened to the power of Heaven Way. It seemed it's not as difficult for a Phase 3 Universe God to be enlightened to the power of Heaven Way now. This was due to the cultivating environment. After Jian Wushuang entered the headquarters of the Lineage of Stars, he roamed around within the Lineage of Stars instead of going to find Hall Master Yuan. Soon, a battle between disciples caught his attention. This battle occurred at one of the stars. The 2 people battling it out were both Phase 3 Universe Gods. One of them was a disciple of Star Palace, while the other was just a core disciple. This battle attracted the attention of many other disciples as they crowded around to watch. Jian Wushuang was within the crowd. Both senior brothers are very powerful. Senior brother Tian Yi and senior brother Chen Feng both are enlightened to the power of Heaven Way. However, senior brother Chen Feng was enlightened for a long period of time. Furthermore, he is a disciple of the Star Palace and should be stronger. Look, senior brother Tian Yi is already suppressed. Even though senior brother Tian Yi is a top-tier core disciple, he still has work to do before he can beat senior brother Chen Feng. Jian Wushuang heard the surrounding chatter. He shook his head slightly and said, Tian Yi's sword skill is not so simple. He might win this battle. Jian Wushuang commented casually. Jian Wushuang could see that Tian Yi had yet to use all his sword skills considering his battle experience and how much more powerful he was. Right after he commented, several disciples looked over at Jian Wushuang. You think senior brother Chen Feng will lose? Are you kidding? That's right. Senior brother Chen Feng is a disciple of the Star Palace. Hey, who are you? Why have I never seen you before? Furthermore, what do you mean when you say senior brother Chen Feng will lose to senior brother Tian Yi? A teenage girl in purple clothes stared at Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang was stunned. Right then, Tian Yi finally used all his sword skills. It was swift and decisive as he immediately turned the battle around. Within moments, he had defeated Chen Feng. He really won? The teenage girl in purple clothes was shocked as they had all expected Chen Feng to win. In the arena, Chen Feng looked at Tian Yi enraged. Your sword skills, senior brother Chen Feng. Hall Master He Xiu mentored me personally. That is why I had a breakthrough in my sword skills. Otherwise, there would be no way I could beat you, Tian Yi said. Chapter 22:15 Palace Master, is that the case? The disciples watching then understood what had happened. The most powerful man in the lineage of stars was the Palace Master. Below the Palace Master were the Hall Masters, who were all almighties. Among all the Hall Masters, Hall Master He Xiu was one that many respected greatly. He himself was a genius who was incredibly powerful. By many myths he was also a lineal disciple of the Palace Master. He was one of the most powerful men in the lineage of stars. It would have been weird if one did not improve greatly after being mentored by him personally. After hearing the explanation, Chen Feng felt more at ease. On the other hand, Jian Wushuang looked weird. He Xiu was his lineal disciple. Never have I thought that little brat would have such a high status within the lineage of stars. Jian Wushuang smiled. You there? You have yet to answer my question. How did you know senior brother Tian Yi has yet to use all his sword skills? Furthermore, who are you? The teenage girl in purple clothes asked Jian Wushuang again. I guessed it, Jian Wushuang answered casually. You guessed it? The teenage girl in purple clothes did not want to let Jian Wushuang go just like that. Right then, a top figure appeared on this star as the aura of a top-tier chaotic real god radiated out in all directions. All the disciples on that planet panicked. What are all of you doing? It was a graceful, handsome young man. Even though he was not angry, everyone was afraid. He scanned the crowd as all the disciples including Tian Yi and Chen Feng lowered their heads. Aside from Jian Wushuang, no one dared to look him in the eye. This graceful young man noticed Jian Wushuang. The graceful young man turned pale as he appeared in front of Jian Wushuang at the next moment. Greetings, Palace Master, the graceful young man greeted as he broke out in cold sweat. The reason why he radiated out his aura was to control the situation. He had never thought that Jian Wushuang would be in the crowd as well. Ling Feibai, it has been a while. How are you? Jian Wushuang smiled. This graceful young man was Ling Feibai. They had both been disciples of the Star Palace at one point in time. When Jian Wushuang had just joined the Star Palace, he had fought Ling Feibai and lost to him. Now that they had met again, their fighting power and status were incomparable. However, Ling Feibai was a genius. He was the strongest top-tier chaotic real god. His name was on the real god ranking list, and he had high hopes of breaking through to become an almighty. Palace Master still remembers me. Ling Feibai was pleasantly surprised. Seeing this, the other disciples were shocked. Who is he? Why does Elder He Ling treat him so respectfully? Elder He Ling is one of the most powerful real gods within the lineage of stars. He does not even treat an ordinary hall master with this much respect. If I heard correctly, Elder Ling called him Palace Master? Palace Master? Which Palace Master? The disciples were shocked. Palace Master? How many Palace Masters were there within the lineage of star? There was only one. The identity of the man in front of them. There are some things I have to do. I shall take my leave. Jian Wushuang smiled as he disappeared from everyone's sight. After Jian Wushuang left, everyone on the star erupted into a frenzy. Palace Master. Oh my God. I actually saw the Palace Master himself. The Palace Master of the lineage of stars is one of the most powerful men in the eternal chaotic world. He managed to turn the tides of the great battle more than 20,000 years ago and was our savior. He just appeared in front of us? It really is the palace master. Never had I thought that he would be this easygoing. The disciples started to chatter in excitement. Jian Wushuang was referred to as a legend. Within the eternal chaotic world, many young cultivators respected him and believed in him blindly, especially those from the lineage of stars and the green fire world. However, it would be extremely difficult for even almighties to meet him personally. As for these disciples in the realm of universe gods, it was all the more impossible to meet him. However, Jian Wushuang had just appeared in front of them. "Oh my God! I just spoke to the palace master and he replied?" The teenage girl in purple clothes was dazed. She was overwhelmed with excitement. At the same time, she finally knew why Jian Wushuang knew that Tian-Yi had yet to use all his sword skills. Even though it was Hall Master He who had mentored Tian-Yi, Hall Master He Xiu was Jian Wushuang's disciple. Jian Wushuang did not know that the disciples had reacted that way. He had appeared on that star to view the battle between the disciples as it had piqued his interest. After he left that star, Jian Wushuang reached the meeting hall within the lineage of stars where Hall Master Yuan, He Xiu, Hall Master Gu Xian and others were waiting. Jian Wushuang sat on the throne within the meeting hall and the remaining 10 experts sat below him. The number of almighties within the lineage of stars was higher more than before. Some of these almighties were originally disciples within the lineage of stars, while others were experts that came and pledged their loyalty. During the battle, the lineage of stars suffered heavy losses. Emperor God Jiao Yin, Emperor God Xian Wu and Hall Master Nye Yun died and lineage of stars needed experts to fill the gaps. Right now, these almighties looked at Jian Wushuang respectfully. "What happened?" Jian Wushuang asked as he looked down at everyone. Hall Master Yuan stood up and said, "Palace Master. As you know, the lineage of stars is getting stronger by the day. Our influence and standing in the eternal chaotic world is also improving. Now we are wondering what to do to those enemies we had." Jian Wushuang raised his eyebrows. Lineage of stars indeed had many enemies. Back then, there had been 3 forces that had allied together and attacked their headquarters. Luckily, he had been there. With the help of Emperor 13, they had defeated this wave of enemies. After that, because of the Great War, the lineage of stars had focused on improving their own strength. However, they would still fight there and teach their enemies if necessary. However, they had already settled their grudges with some of their enemies. Chapter 22:16 Abnormality. Just like Abysmal Palace. Jian Wushuang and Abysmal Saint Master settled their grudges and became good friends. Lineage of Stars and Abysmal Palace would not have any more disputes as both parties were already on good terms. Like Soaring Heaven King Palace. Soaring Heaven King Palace had offended Jian Wushuang the most back then. However, with Jian Wushuang's current power level, he did not care about Soaring Heaven King Palace. Furthermore, the leader of the Soaring Heaven King Palace, Great Emperor Tianling, had fought together with Jian Wushuang during the battle at the Three Emperors World. Great Emperor Tianling had given his all during the battle, hence the hatred between Jian Wushuang and the Soaring Heaven King Palace was not as strong anymore. After the battle, Great Emperor Tianling had apologized to Jian Wushuang personally. Even though on a personal level, their grudge was settled, their respective clans still hated each other. The lineage of stars now was extremely powerful. Even though they had not eliminated their enemies, it was normal for the lineage of stars to make lives for their enemies difficult. Jian Wushuang knew about this. Of course, lineage of stars would not cross certain boundaries and they knew their limits. But are our enemies still trying something funny? Jian Wushuang looked at Hall Master Yuan and asked. These enemies knew their place and did not try anything funny at all. When they saw people from the lineage of stars, they would hide and would not offend us at all. However, the real martial arts divine church started behaving abnormally recently, Hall Master Yuan said. Real martial arts divine church? Jian Wushuang raised his eyebrows. Real martial arts divine church was one of 5 members of the Star Extermination Alliance. However, after the battle back at the old location of Lineage of Stars, Real Martial Arts Divine Church had suffered heavy losses. Their leader was killed and their fighting power plummeted. On top of that, lineage of stars had continued to suppress them. This church was at the brink of annihilation. Lineage of stars had stopped suppressing them after the ancient battlefield had appeared around the green fire world. Then, the Great War broke out and most of the other clans had been preoccupied fighting the war. They did not have excess manpower or strength to take note of the insignificant church. This had allowed them to barely survive till this day. If I am not wrong, the real martial arts divine church did not participate in the battle against Three Emperors World. Am I right? Jian Wushuang asked. Yes. When the battle broke out, experts from most clans within the eternal chaotic world joined the war. Some clans sent every single member they had, while there were some that did not participate at all. The clans that did not join used the reason that they were too weak not to reject the call of duty. The real martial arts divine church was one of such clans. Hall Master Yuan nodded his head and said, "Of course, the real martial arts divine church was at the brink of collapse and did not want to send any almighties to the front line. The Sanctuary Alliance sympathized with them and did not force them to participate. After the Great War, the power of the other clans were greatly weakened, but not the real martial arts divine church. They managed to survive their predicament and became one of the more powerful clans." So the abnormality that you were talking about just now is that the real martial arts divine church started to treat us like enemies again, right? Jian Wushuang said coldly. That is right. The real martial arts divine church originally kept a low profile, even during the 24,000 years that you were in slumber. However, their attitudes changed in the last 1,000 years. They were no longer afraid and acted high and mighty, then they dealt with us. Under normal circumstances, the lineage of stars would not cause trouble for the real martial arts divine church. However, during this period of time, the real martial arts divine church started to cause trouble for us. They even started to fight us head-on. It was like they were emboldened by something and no longer feared us. Is that the case? Jian Wushuang raised his eyebrows. From what Hall Master Yuan had said, Jian Wushuang had noticed that the real martial arts divine church was acting abnormally. Because of Jian Wushuang, the lineage of stars had the best resources and was one of the most dominant forces in the eternal chaotic world. Which clan dared to make lineage of stars their enemies? Even if they suffered losses due to the lineage of stars, they would not take it to heart or tolerate these losses quietly. This was especially the case for the enemies of lineage of stars, as they were extremely careful not to anger their enemy. The real martial arts divine church did not keep a low profile, but provoked the lineage of stars actively? It might have been alright if they had provoked them while Jian Wushuang was in slumber. The reason could have been because they thought Jian Wushuang would not awaken, which would cause lineage of stars to lose their greatest asset. However, they had been extremely respectful while Jian Wushuang was in slumber and became more aggressive when Jian Wushuang awakened, to the point they dared to fight lineage of stars head-on. Hall Master Yuan is right. Where does the real martial arts divine church get their courage from? Jian Wushuang muttered to himself. Within the eternal chaotic world, who dared to go against Jian Wushuang besides Emperor Bai? Even the great emperors did not have the courage to do so. Hall Master Yuan, have you sent experts to investigate this matter? Jian Wushuang asked. Yes. After the most recent fight we had, I sent Emperor God Ling Chu to investigate the matter. Lineage of stars had many almighties and emperor gods. Emperor God Ling Chu was one of them. The leader of the real martial arts divine church died and was a lot weaker compared to before. The number of almighties they have is limited and they only had one ordinary emperor god. However, after Emperor God Ling Chu reached the territory that the real martial arts divine church controlled, we lost contact. If I am not wrong, Emperor God Ling Chu has already died, Hall Master Yuan said. Oh, before he died, did he send any message back? Jian Wushuang asked. Nope. I only knew that he entered the territory controlled by the real martial arts divine church. Before he could send me any more messages, he died, Hall Master Yuan said as he shook his head. Hearing this, Jian Wushuang squinted his eyes and thought seriously. Emperor gods were one of the most powerful kinds of people within the eternal chaotic world. It was not difficult to kill an emperor god, as many peak emperor gods could do that. But it was not easy to kill one without giving him a chance to transmit a message. Chapter 22:17 Real Martial Arts Divine Church. Looks like something happened within the Real Martial Arts Divine Church, Jian Wushuang muttered. He had a keen look. This was the reason why I messaged you, Hall Master Yuan said. Alright, I will settle this. Disciple, do you have anything important to settle in the short run? Jian Wushuang said. No, He Xiu answered. If that is the case, follow me to the territory that the Real Martial Arts Divine Church controls, Jian Wushuang instructed. Roger, He Xiu nodded his head. Soon, Jian Wushuang set off. The Real Martial Arts Divine Church was located in one of the sanctuaries and occupied a large territory. Before the battle at the Lineage of Stars, the Real Martial Arts Divine Church had been an overlord in this territory and was one of the strongest clans in the eternal chaotic world. After the battle in the Lineage of Stars, their leader had died and their overall combat power was far worse compared to before. Even though they were still the most powerful clan on their territory, they were not as dominant anymore. However, within the last 1,000 years, the Real Martial Arts Divine Church seemed to have recovered. They had become as dominant and overbearing as before. They had even dared to provoke Lineage of Stars. Those clans that tried something funny during the time they were weak were all eliminated. The Real Martial Arts Divine Church had once again become the overlord of this territory and no one dared to provoke them. Within the Real Martial Arts Divine Church, an elder man in white robes was in an independent space somewhere within the group of majestic buildings. The aura from this elder man was of the level of Emperor God. He was the last Emperor God that the Real Martial Arts Divine Church had. Emperor God Bai Xing. Emperor God Bai Xing was one of the weakest Emperor Gods in the eternal chaotic world. However, he was still an Emperor God, and hence he took over the Real Martial Arts Divine Church and became its new leader. Church Master. A man in crimson armor appeared beside Emperor God Bai Xing. Have you done the final checks? Emperor Go Bai Xing asked coldly. Yes. There are a total of 12,000 people that come from outside the sanctuary. We have checked that they are virgins under the age of 30. According to the Lord's request, they have never cultivated nor explored the outside world before, the man in crimson armor said. Okay. Emperor God Bai Xing nodded his head as he looked up at a floating island in the sky. Many beautiful girls sat on the barren island. They were not cultivators, evident from the fact that they did not radiate any spiritual power. They looked around, confused. They did not know where they were or what was going to happen to them. This batch is good. The Lord should be satisfied. Now, go and prepare the next batch, Emperor God Bai Xing said. Don't worry, Church Master. I have already conquered 10 ancient worlds and commanded them to groom young girls who do not cultivate or venture out to explore the world. Even though it is difficult to have 1 out of 1,000, it should be alright if 10 of these ancient worlds groom at the same time. This can guarantee that we have enough numbers for the next batch 30 years later, the man in blood armor said confidently. That's good. Due to what happened to us back during the Great Battle, we were almost annihilated. Thank God we met the 3 lords. With their help, the Real Martial Arts Divine Church can return to, or even exceed its former glory. It is even possible to outshine Lineage of Stars and even Green Fire World to become the most powerful clan in the eternal chaotic world. Emperor God Bai Xing nodded his head and said, That's right. The man in crimson armor nodded his head seriously. He was absolutely confident in the 3 lords. Can you take your leave first? I will inform the lords to come over soon, Emperor God Bai Xing said. Chapter 22:18 The Bai. After hearing what the middle-aged man had said, the blurry figure fell silent. It was true that they had been in slumber for far too long. It was so long that they themselves had no idea how long they had been in slumber. After the great battle of the ancient past, they had been in slumber. Originally, there had been 5 of them. During the great battle, 2 of them died. Now, only the eldest brother, the second and the youngest were alive. The youngest of them had a unique addiction. He liked to take in virgin blood. Back in the ancient past, there had been numerous experts, hence he had still held back. He only went crazy now because he was in an era in which he did not need to hold back and he had finally awakened after such a long time. Brother, I will allow you to continue because you just awakened. However, please keep a low profile, the blurry figure reminded. Don't worry. I asked the people from the Real Martial Arts Divine Church to get those female virgins. There won't be too much commotion as these females aren't cultivators and have no background. The middle-aged man smiled. The blurry figure nodded his head slightly and stopped reprimanding. Oh yes. Have the Real Martial Arts Divine Church prepared the resources we need? The blurry figure asked. Yes, they have prepared them all. They are with me. However, these treasures are not of good quality. The middle-aged man brought out a Qian Kuan ring and said. The blurry figure scanned the ring, not surprised at all. This era is far different from ours. They are doing well from the fact that they can still find these resources. At least these resources are beneficial to me and our older brother. Even though this era is far worse, there are still many resources out there. The main point is that the Real Martial Arts Divine Church is too weak and cannot be even considered a top-tier clan. Their means are limited, so of course they cannot get us all the good stuff. It would be a different story if it was Sanctuary Alliance. Brother, I don't understand why we are staying within a mere Real Martial Arts Divine Church. With our current fighting power, we can forcefully take over Sanctuary Alliance and use their power to find all the resources we need. Would that not be much faster and more efficient? The middle-aged man asked. It's not as easy as you think. Even though the average power level of this era is nothing compared to our era, that is because of restrictions of heaven and earth. We too are under these restrictions and the maximum fighting power we can have is peak chaotic realm. We might not be strong compared to the top-tier experts in this era. For example, even our older brother is not confident in defeating the strongest two men in this era, Emperor Bai and Sword Emperor. They are just natives of this era. How strong can they be? The middle-aged man said disapprovingly. Do not look down on them. Don't forget Blood Emperor from 20,000 years ago. He was an emperor of the Blood clan. Even though the Blood clan had many emperors, those who reached that level are definitely much stronger than me and our older brother. And that Blood Emperor died in the hands of the natives you mentioned, the blurry figure said seriously. Furthermore, what we are targeting is Heaven's horizon. There is no need for us to provoke the experts from this era. Hence, you should maintain a low profile. Do not blame me for not helping you if you anger a top-tier expert from this era and die in their hands. After the blurry figure said this, he disappeared. The middle-aged man curled his lips, evidence that he did not take what the blurry figure said seriously. On the territory that the Real Martial Arts Divine Church controlled, in a large town near the headquarters of the Real Martial Arts Divine Church, Jian Wushuang was in a tavern in the town, drinking wine. This is what we will do. The few of you will go and reinforce Mo immediately. Bring along 2 blood slaves with you. If you run into trouble, let these 2 blood slaves go and settle it. If they can't, message me and I will ask the Lord to help us. Yes. The few Sir Gods nodded their heads solemnly and set off. He Xiao and Mo were still fighting in the large town. Naturally, Sir God Mo kept retreating. Right when Sir God Mo could not take it anymore, 3 figures appeared in the distance. How dare you, He Xiao? Humph. Even if you are from the lineage of stars, we will not let you leave easily when you murder someone within the Real Martial Arts Divine Church territory. 2 yells were heard. The surrounding cultivators heard the 2 yells and they understood why He Xiao dared to attack. So that man is from the lineage of stars? No wonder he dared to attack. I heard that the lineage of stars and the Real Martial Arts Divine Church were enemies. While the spectators were exclaiming, the 3 Sir Gods linked up with Mo as they looked at He Xiao angrily. Is that all that came? He Xiao face darkened. The few of us are more than enough to take care of you. Attack now, suppress him. Then ask his master, the Sword Emperor, to come personally to collect him, one of the Sir Gods said. There was an uproar from everyone in the town. Suppress He Su, then ask the Sword Emperor personally to get him? Within the eternal chaotic world, those who were educated all knew who the Sword Emperor was. He was one of the most powerful men within the eternal chaotic world. A mere real martial arts divine church was not qualified for the Sword Emperor to come down personally. Ha! His tone is really demanding, Jian Wushuang smiled lightly. At the center of the town, He Xiu started fighting against the 4 Sir Gods from the real martial arts divine church. Even though he had been fighting 4 alone, he was not afraid at all. He no longer held back and fought with all his might. He had fought 4 Sir Gods and was still at an advantage. He Xiu flicked his sword up as a ghostly sword light pierced the chest of one of the Sir Gods. There was a large wound on his chest. He was severely injured. The 4 Sir Gods were already at a disadvantage. With one of them getting injured, their disadvantage in battle grew bigger. Quick, update what happened here to the church master. Let him make the decision. The 4 Sir Gods messaged Emperor God Bai Xing immediately. Within the headquarters of the real martial arts divine church. As expected, things are not so simple. We only know that He Xiu has 4 Dao silver armor Dao soldiers. If I'm not wrong, there are other experts hiding in the dark, or he has other tricks up his sleeves. Emperor God Bai Xing was not surprised when he received the message. There is nothing the 2 blood slaves and Mo Chiu and friends can do in this situation. Even if I was there, the experts from Lineage of Stars would intercept me. If this is the case, I shall ask the lords for help. Emperor God Bai Xing no longer hesitated and went to look for the lords immediately. Within one of the quiet palaces. Lord. Emperor God Bai Xing stood respectfully in front of the middle-aged man in silvery, loose robes. What is the matter? The middle-aged man raised his head and looked at Emperor God Bai Xing. His attitude was extremely cold. Emperor God Bai Xing was only an emperor god. Back in the ancient past, he had just been an ordinary expert in the middle-stage chaotic realm. The middle-aged man would not take him seriously. The middle-aged man would not even take the entire real martial arts divine church. If not for his special addiction to virgin blood and his elder brothers needing resources, he would not have had any interactions with the real martial arts divine church. But previously, you made Emperor God Ling Chu into a blood slave. The clan he was from, Lineage of Stars, sent experts here. They are now at one of the towns outside of the real martial arts divine church and are fighting with the experts from our church. They might not be able to hold on for long, Emperor God Bai Xing said carefully. The middle-aged man had a calm manner. The real martial arts divine church did search for certain resources under the command of him and his 2 brothers. He knew that the method that the church had used would definitely provoke other clans. Hence, they had agreed that they would help if the church encountered any problems. When Emperor God Ling Chu first reached the territory belonging to the real martial arts divine church, the middle-aged man settled him personally. This is quite annoying. How many people did Lineage of Stars send, and what realms are they in? The middle-aged man asked casually. From what we know, they only sent 1 Sir God named He Xiu, Emperor God Bai Xing said. This is ridiculous. You ask me to help you to deal with a Sir God? Are the people from the real martial arts divine church all useless? The middle-aged man roared in anger. Lord, please calm down. Even though he is a Sir God, he is a genius. His fighting power is that of an ordinary emperor god. Furthermore, he brought along 4 silver armor Dao soldiers. Emperor God Bai Xing quickly explained. Chapter 22-21 The backing of real martial arts divine church. All almighties from the real martial arts divine church have surfaced except me, and even brought your 2 blood slaves, but still we are no match against He Xiu. The Lineage of Stars may still have other experts hidden in the dark. I come to you with no other choice. Emperor God Bai Xing said respectfully. Is that so? The middle-aged man raised his eyebrows. If that is the case, let me follow you. Well, turn that He Xiu into a blood slave as well. Thank you, my lord. Emperor God Bai Xing was elated, and said, I wonder if the other 2 lords are free to follow as well? The middle-aged man sneered. My two elder brothers are busy restoring their pinnacle fighting power. They don't have time for this. The lineage of stars do not need my elder brothers to appear. I can do it myself. The middle-aged man was not impressed. Emperor God Bai Xing's gaze moved. Indeed, unless the Sword Emperor himself came down personally, no one could stop the middle-aged man. Even if the Sword Emperor himself came down, he may not even become a worthy opponent. Emperor God Bai Xing did not hesitate any longer and brought the middle-aged man towards the city. A fierce battle was ongoing within the huge city. There were more and more cultivators in the city, staring at that one battle. For a normal cultivator, it was rare to witness battles with so many almighties. Many even recorded it with a mirroring token. While the others were attracted by the battle, Jian Wushuang was still drinking aimlessly in that tavern, unbothered by what was happening outside. Suddenly, Jian Wushuang's gaze moved. Is he here? His soul power could sense an expert was approaching. Indeed, a figure emerged from a void far away and appeared in the middle of the city, in front of all the cultivators. Leader! The four Sir Gods of the real martial arts divine church were delighted. Is Emperor God Bai Xing? The leader of the real martial arts divine church has finally appeared. The surrounding cultivators all recognized Emperor God Bai Xing. He Xiao stared at Emperor God Bai Xing as well. Only Jian Wushuang paid no heed to Emperor God Bai Xing, but focused on another direction instead. Sealing off space-time directly? A clever space-time seal method as well. Simply laying it down feels enough to block normal Great Emperor's transmissions, Jian Wushuang sneered. With such methods, it was no wonder Great Emperors were unable to transmit. Like Emperor God Ling Chu. After sealing off the space-time, a figure gradually appeared in the void. It was a middle-aged man in a loose silver robe. His aura was strange. It felt like an ordinary almighty, but it was definitely more than that. Bai Xing, there are too many people here. The middle-aged man looked around with his cold eyes. Please take down He Xiu freely. I will handle the rest. Emperor God Bai Xing smiled. He knew what the middle-aged man meant. He did not want too much attention from the experts of that era, instructed by his two elder brothers. Like the last time they had handled Emperor God Ling Chu, they had handled it properly and at a remote location. Nothing had got out. But now they were in a large city in front of so many cultivators. To make sure news did not spread, the real martial arts divine church could only be crueler. I need to handle him? The middle-aged man looked over He Xiu, like looking down on an ant. He Xiu felt shivers running down his spine, being targeted by that middle-aged man. He had to control his trembles. He's so strong. Too strong. He Xiu clenched his teeth but showed no signs of fear. After all, he was not alone. He had someone covering his back. So what if the person was strong? He could not possibly be stronger than Master, right? He Xiu, you must not be the only one from lineage of stars this time. Call out to all your experts behind you. Emperor God Bai Xing laughed. He was confident with the middle-aged man behind him. At that moment, Jian Wushuang, who was drinking beside the window in the tavern, disappeared. In a moment, he appeared beside He Xiu. Are you the backing behind the real martial arts divine church? A faint voice resonated. Everyone was attracted by the voice and had their eyes on the young man beside He Xiu. The man was in a red robe and stood there casually. The aura of all the experts around were completely suppressed. The entire city became peaceful. This strange scene turned the faces of everyone around. Emperor God Bai Xing of the real martial arts divine church and the few Sir Gods had their eyes dead on Jian Wushuang. Their eyes were virtually popping out of their sockets. Sword Emperor! A terrifying scream came out from Sir God Mo Chiu. Sir God Mo Chiu felt his head almost exploding. He had only fear within him. Unprecedented fear, dreadful fear. This scream made the people present understand the identity of this person. They all turned fanatical. Sword Emperor! The Sword Emperor himself. Leader of the lineage of stars, the highest leader of the eternal chaotic world, the strongest in the eternal chaotic world. The legendary Sword Emperor appears in front of us? I'm not dreaming, am I? The countless cultivators were all dumbfounded. Some almost slapped themselves to make sure it was not a dream. The leader of the eternal chaotic world, Sword Emperor, had arrived. Chapter 2222 Xie Sword Emperor? The Emperor God Bai Xing stared at the young man in front of him, full of fear. He was the leader of the real martial arts divine church. He knew how terrifying Sword Emperor was. The Sword Emperor was the recognized leader of the eternal chaotic world. No one could surpass him. But he also knew that Jian Wushuang had slaughtered his way to the top. His fame was built on the blood of others. Notorious. He had not expected the Sword Emperor to arrive personally. Naturally, he was shocked. The only person that did not fear Jian Wushuang was that middle-aged man. You are that Sword Emperor? The middle-aged man looked at Jian Wushuang lazily. I hear you're the strongest cultivator in this era, next to Emperor Bai. But you don't seem like much. He did not take Jian Wushuang to heart at all. That was normal. He was from the ancient era. For experts from that era, the highest experts of the new era were only peak chaotic realm, nothing in comparison to their era. After hearing that, Emperor God Bai Xing calmed down. So what if you're the Sword Emperor? How could you compete against our ancient era lords? Emperor God Bai Xing thought to himself. Jian Wushuang glanced at the middle-aged man. From the ancient era? Jian Wushuang had long ago guessed the latter's identity. In that era, besides Emperor Bai, no one could have doubted him. If the real martial arts divine church provoked lineage of stars because they had the backing of this middle-aged man, then he must have been from the ancient era to give the church such a confidence boost. Emperor God Bai Xing, your backing is only this? Jian Wushuang swept at him. Sword Emperor, you are scary but only in this era. With Lord Xie from the ancient era, you can forget about escaping, Emperor God Bai Xing said. Xie was the middle-aged man's name. Is it? Jian Wushuang's lips curled. Thanks. My second brother had instructed me not to clash with experts from this era, but you came to my doorstep yourself. You can't blame me. Xie was smiling deviously, now with a red dagger in his hand. The crimson dagger exuded a cold glaze under the sun that made one shiver. It would be interesting if I killed you and made you my blood servant. Xie smiled and made his move. Shoo! A red shadow zoomed past in the void. No one could fix their gaze on Xie. So fast. The cultivators were all astonished. Careful, master, even He Xiu warned him. He too felt that Xie was too fast. But Jian Wushuang stood there, not moving a single muscle. A crimson light tore through the void and appeared in front of Jian Wushuang without a trace. The crimson figure was going straight for Jian Wushuang's throat. Xie had a devious smile on him. Die, ant. The dagger was getting closer to his throat. The surrounding crowd held their breaths. As the crimson light was about to pierce Jian Wushuang's throat, a large hand grabbed it. The hand exuded surging divine power and stopped the crimson dagger with his own bare hands. In the void, Jian Wushuang remained standing, Xie about a meter away from him. His crimson dagger was being held tightly by Jian Wushuang, like a large plier. No matter what Xie did, the dagger would not move forward. How is that possible? Xie's eyes glared in astonishment. The dagger was a formidable chaos divine treasure, and he had given everything he had in that blow, but Jian Wushuang had caught it with his bare hands? He was an ancient era expert. Even though he was restricted by the rules of heaven and earth, he had so many secret skills experts of the current era could only dream of. He was confident no cultivator of the current era could be his opponent. His two elder brothers had their reservations towards Emperor Bai, but he had always dismissed those fears. But now, it was beyond what he had expected. How could he actually catch my dagger? How is that possible? Xie mumbled. Chapter 2223 Thunder-like Suppression Hong. That punch split the earth. A large hole that permeated the entire city came out of thin air. That horrifying, earth-shattering blow was heading towards Xie. The sheer power alone took everyone around aback. Xie's face darkened and he threw a punch out consciously, trying to resist. But as the fists collided head-on, there was a bang. Then there was the sound of crackling of bones. Xie Ye's entire arm had been blasted away from the sheer power, and he spat out a large mouthful of blood. This level of power, chaotic divine demon. Xie Yu was terrified. Impossible. Are there no restrictions placed upon this earth? Everyone can only reach chaotic realm powers. Sword Emperor, how can he do that? Impossible. Xie Yu was being torn apart. He did not know that the restrictions were only placed upon typical cultivators and did not affect inverse cultivators. When Emperor Bai had given his all during the final fight against the Three Emperors world, along with the secret skills of Star Palace amplifying his powers tenfold, he could have reached chaotic divine demon levels. But Jian Wushuang's fighting power now was stronger than Emperor Bai's. Emperor Bai needed the secret skills of Star Palace to reach chaotic divine demon levels. But for Jian Wushuang, with the ultimate phase of the inverse cultivation's 7th step mastered, bloodline power, and immemorial celestial body, he could hit chaotic divine demon levels even without secret skills of Star Palace. Jian Wushuang could crush Xie Yu with pure power alone. That left Xie Yu no room to even struggle against Jian Wushuang. Run! Xie Yu finally got his act together, or perhaps Jian Wushuang's power had frightened him. Grabbing his dagger with his bare hands, then releasing chaotic divine demon powers in a single punch? How could he block that when he could only perform pinnacle chaotic realm powers himself? He had to run. Don't think you can escape. Jian Wushuang glanced coldly at Xie Yu and leapt over casually. The leap seemed casual, but it contained the power of space-time, making him endlessly faster than the speed at which Xie Yu could escape. Immediately he caught up with Xie Yu. He has rules of order? Xie Yu glared. But Jian Wushuang had already pulled out his Blood Mountain sword and directly threw it up in the air, turning it into a large mountain. The bottom of the mountain had streaks of mysterious lines, forming a large black hole in an attempt to suck in Xie Yu. Suppressing me? Dream on. Xie Yu was enraged and started to struggle in a frenzy. Struggle? What's the use of that? Jian Wushuang could only sneer. The suppressive abilities of the Blood Mountain sword increased in proportion with Jian Wushuang's own abilities. To activate the suppression, divine power had to be used. With Jian Wushuang's divine power being fully released to chaotic divine demon levels, how could the chaotic realm Xie Yu possibly have blocked his suppression? No. Xie Yu could only scream as his body approached the black hole. Brothers! Save me! Xie Yu screamed as he transmitted his call for help to his brothers. After that, he was fully absorbed by the black hole. The large mountain reverted back to the Blood Mountain sword once again and landed in Jian Wushuang's hand. Jian Wushuang remained indifferent as if he had simply suppressed a normal man, instead of an ancient-era expert. His heart did not flutter at all. Indeed, an ancient era that could only demonstrate the third stage Great Emperor powers no longer excited him anymore. He could suppress or kill them with a flip of his hand. But it looked completely different in front of all the cultivators. This, Emperor God Bai Xing of the Real Martial Arts Divine Church was dumbfounded. His eyes were almost falling out of their sockets. Sir God Mo Chiu and the rest were equally shocked.